Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thank you guys for joining me. We're doing a Thursday night astrology readings live on the channel. So if you guys can see me, give me a thumbs up, say hello in the chat. Let me know where you guys are tuning in from, especially if you guys are new here. Please subscribe to the channel, click the bell button below so you're alerted as to when we have new videos out. I'm here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday trying to use tarot and astrology to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. And obviously we're usually here on Fridays, so we'll be back next Friday, usual scheduling. We'll be doing live tarot. But tonight on Thursday, the 30th of October, we are live doing these. Oops, I guess we're having audio issue, guys, sorry. Hold on. Can you guys hear me okay? We're having some issues with some of our mics, so that's what was kind of creating the delay this evening. So if you guys can hear me, let me know in the chat. That way I can make sure that we're good. You can? Okay, good. Thank you. All right, so once again, we're here live on Thursday, October 30th, doing readings. If you guys are watching this on Friday or Saturday, I'm no longer live. I missed you. Please don't send any, donations for readings. I'll catch you guys here next time. And I've already got a number of people who are already in the queue. We always take all our level 4 memberships first. So if you happen to be a level 4 member and you haven't cashed in on your monthly reading, just let me know. I'd be happy to do your reading for you. And if you guys are not a member, definitely consider joining. You guys support me as a full-time content creator. You're going to get all kinds of goodies, like level 4 people are going to get reading once a month with me during my lives. You guys are also going to have access to the daily horoscopes club that you get from level 3. You're going to get shout outs and you support me. So definitely check out my memberships page on my channel. We're seeing lots of growth in the channel. We're also putting out videos early for those of you guys who are at any level of the memberships. You guys are going to see some of the content when I put it out early for you guys before they're aired on Tuesdays, Thursdays, or Sundays. Let's see what else. There's some other things, I'm sure. So if you guys want to get a reading, scan the QR code right here. This will take you to my PayPal. We're going to be answering any one question that you guys have about timing question. You want to understand something about your natal chart in an aspect. Maybe you have questions about, work, health, love, business, that kind of stuff. All of that, I'm going to need your time, date, and location of birth. So please, 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 in the memo box, don't only put your question, but also give me your date of birth information, because I'll be casting your chart live on the YouTube channel so everybody can see, and you'll see me right all over your chart like Charlie, and give you some insight kind of talking about the transits. Readings are obviously by donation. So we're doing $55 US donation for one question, or we are answering synastry questions for $75. And that's where I take a look at you and a partner's astrology and kind of talk to you guys about the pros and cons. Empress says, I'm a member, but I forgot which level, so I sent PayPal anyway. Appreciate you. Thank you. I'll make sure that we get you on there. We'll get you on the list. So far, let's see, who do I have? So I've got, for the people who have paid, here we go. I've got Amanda, I've got Raina, I've got Brianna, and that's who I have so far. And then we also had Prue that snuck in there and has a question on the super chat. But if there's anybody else in here, let me know. Empress, are you either Brianna, Raina, or Amanda? It's got to be one of the three, because I don't have anybody else that kind of popped in there. So let me know, especially if you guys have a different name. Brianna. Okay, got it. Audio is fine in Phoenix. Thanks, David. Appreciate it. Obviously, it's Halloween, so I had to dress up like something. I guess I couldn't go wrong doing Minnie Mouse. All right, readings are open. We'll let you know when we're calling last call, when we shut down the queue. Scan the QR code if you want to get in, and when you hear your name, that means that your reading is coming up. So we're going to, unless there's any other level 4 members who pop in, we're going to be starting with Brianna. So let's pull up Brianna's info here. And Brianna is 125.88 at 9:21 p.m. in Sacramento. And let's see what Brianna has to say, because I didn't see a question for you. So do you want to send it to me? Do you have a specific question? All right, curious about what to expect the remainder of my nodal return. Well, I like questions like that aren't boring. Thank you. All right, so Brianna's in the process of kind of completing her nodal return, although for the most part, it's done. Maybe it's feeling like a little bit drawn out because Saturn is actually still in conjunction to it. So that's going to kind of lengthen this maybe until the beginning of like 2026 or so. What we're looking at here, she's a Virgo rising. She has her sun in Aquarius and she has her moon in Taurus. And the transiting North Node has been going through Pisces since the beginning of this year. So, you know, every 18 and a half years or so, you have that nodal return where the transiting North Node is conjunct the natal North Node, transiting South Node is conjunct the natal South Node. We see this when you're about 18, 19, it's like that hard realignment. And then when you have it the second go around, this is giving you like, I think more of an adult kind of view of where your life is going. Obviously you hear a lot of people talk about the North Node, that's like your destiny or your dharma, what you're meant to achieve. And like, there is some truth to that, but I feel like the North Node is oftentimes things that feel very scary or challenging, or things that we don't know how to kind of like integrate or kind of bring into our life. But obviously it is about fulfillment. So it is about having that growth like on a soul level. So if you happen to be, you know, around the same age, or if you're kind of born in, you know, the 1988, 1989, you guys are all kind of gearing up for your nodal returns. But the North Node has already come into conjunction with her North Node, and it looks like her North Node is at 24 degrees, which is a Pisces degree in the sign of Pisces, right along her descendant. And I would probably assume that because Saturn has been there around the same time, it's been a little bit more difficult, because not only like when transiting Saturn is conjunct your natal North Node, which happens every like 28, 29 years, that's also a reinforcement of, hey, we need to kind of like really commit to long-lasting change and, you know, maturity or experiences, particularly Pisces ones that could be like confusing, things that are spiritual. It could be, you know, seventh house characters like, you know, therapists, astrologers. It can be also about counselors. It could be about dealing with relationship matters. So when I look at this, I'm like, yeah, you know, it's been a double dose of like harsh reality, not only with the nodal return, but because transiting Saturn has been there at the same time. And Neptune's been around the same degrees as well, although it's kind of like moved away from it. So kind of wrapping on this nodal return, it looks like that was actually taking place right around like May of this year. That's when it hit 24. And Saturn and Neptune started easing up. So I would look at, you know, probably I would say maybe, you know, February, you know, March and April is when we had, you know, Venus retrogrades here, eclipses here. Saturn and Neptune then went into your seventh house, and then you had your nodal return. So reflect on what was taking place up into the spring of 2025. I would assume that because the nodal return is ruled by Jupiter, and you had Jupiter in the 10th, there was something kind of like you going back and forth going, okay, what am I cutting off or dissolving or changing about a relationship? Where is somebody like, you know, not showing up for me? Or where are you feeling neglected or isolated, or you were dealing with a partner that had some issues? And that square to Jupiter was kind of like you going like, yeah, it's gonna create a status change. So something about the way that you relate to people and your name, your status, your relationship status, your professional status, there was gonna be some kind of change. Thank you. She says, finish my divorce. Okay. So it did all of the things. So like I said, the North Node, it's neither good nor bad. I think it's like neutral. It's just saying things that are necessary or kind of need to happen for your evolution. And if you look, the North Node is conjunct Juno. So Juno is also about relationships and partnerships. So I've seen like a lot of Virgo and Virgo risings who started this cycle over like the last several years of the eclipse is in Pisces, the Saturn-Neptune transit in Pisces, and it's now going to be concluding, obviously, in February when both of these signs go into Aries. I've seen a lot of people kind of go into the Saturn in the 7th house transit and they're like, okay, I've been married or I've been in a relationship. And then all of a sudden you start to kind of really see the relationship challenges for what they are. Now, Saturn does well in the 7th house. So I feel like this can actually be really good for like overcoming, issues where you need better balance or you need more diplomacy, or maybe you're willing to work with a therapist. And then as they go through the 7th house transit over about 2.5 years, if the relationship's not cutting it, then a relationship ends and it's kind of like paving the way and teaching you a lot about those experiences that you had. And then it can actually bring another person in, right? So I know you're asking about the nodal return, but I kind of had to do the build up to this. So the nodal return is done. It'll continue to stay, the North Node will continue to stay in Pisces until next summer. And you're watching now Saturn and Neptune retrograde back into the 7th house where there is still some stuff to kind of clean up, or maybe you're reevaluating or considering if you want to date or if you want to get back into a relationship or if you ever see yourself settling down again. And it's trining Jupiter, which is the ruler in the 10th. So it can be good for like new, clients, good things at work, connecting and collaborating with groups. Maybe it means that you're more focused on your social relationships and platonic relationships, and that you may have friends that are kind of helping set you up and like meet other people. At the same time, you're also seeing that the North Node is now heading for your Venus. So I'm a Placidus user. I'm not like a whole house user. But some people would argue that because Venus belongs to the whole house 7, that when the North Node is approaching Venus, it can actually be setting you up to bring in a new destined kind of fated like relationship. And you have to watch out with the North Node because, it can bring people in that seem like it's destined and it's like a good thing. And like sometimes it can be, but other times it can be somebody where you only see what you want to see, especially when it's in Pisces, or people who can influence you in ways that can seem good at the time. And then down the road, you're like, oh, I don't really necessarily think I should have stayed in that relationship, especially when Saturn and Neptune are still in your 7th house too. So you may be a little weary about dating. I would say socializing would be still really good. I would look forward to that North Node hitting my Venus if I were you, because I feel like that's the setup for bringing in what can be a very favorable new like romantic connection and romance. It does look like that's going to be happening in December 2025 here soon. And then the North Node is going to start to separate from your Venus, and that's going to be happening come January. So November, December into January, like this is a time to be watching. And you will also continue to have eclipses actually down the road that are going to be in Pisces that'll still be connected to your nodes. So for example, we had an eclipse here near your Venus that was in September. So that might have been kind of wrapping up and concluding things, or maybe meeting somebody new. We then had a solar eclipse in Virgo opposing that degree, very close to the South Node, where it seems like it's kind of like a flushing out and hitting reset and kind of like redefining who you are. And, maybe still not being sure whether or not you want to commit to somebody because that eclipse was in opposition to Saturn or Neptune. And then there will be other eclipses that are a part of this cycle, like the March 3rd, 2026 eclipse. That's going to be a South Node lunar eclipse in Virgo, a part of your ascendant sign for sure. And it's going to oppose your Venus while there is a Mercury retrograde in your 7th. So, you could be going back and forth with somebody from the past, or maybe somebody is trying to kind of like, if you're not fully divorced yet, they're trying to wrap up the divorce in March. It could be somebody who you were connected to in the past that comes back. It could mean that you're dating somebody and you're going back and forth trying to decide what you want. You just have such a strong Pisces signature on your descendant. Not only is it, in the sign of Pisces, but it's also, your descendant is 24 degrees, which is a Pisces degree. Your North Node is 24, which is a Pisces degree. And it is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is in Aries natally in your 8th. Like that's always complicated when you have your 7th house lord in your 8th. It's kind of similar to like Venus in Scorpio or Venus Pluto aspects. It literally means that one relationship ends and then it's going to dissolve, or it's going to kind of like disappear. You're going to feel like that was like really crazy and kind of hectic, dealing with that relationship. And the 8th house is about that change and transformation. So Aries is going to be, ending that relationship, I mean, I would assume made you realize a lot about yourself. And I think that that's about you changing and transforming and being like, I don't have to stay in a relationship just because I'm afraid of being alone, right? 8th house. And when you realize that you're not willing to settle, or that you have healed and you've kind of come out the other side and you have kind of like transformed the way that you look at relationships, then you're going to be more optimistic and like willing to get into another relationship again. Now, your first marriage is always your 7th house. Second marriage is the 9th house. Third marriage is the 11th house. And if you're lucky, the first house is the 4th. So being that you've already been married one time, and part of your nodal return is about relationships, it may mean that there was this need to kind of dissolve the first one, and then it's making space for the second one to come in, which is going to make this Venus North Node transit, I think, all that much more potent in your astrology, because Venus is the ruler of the 9th house, and you've got, Jupiter that's been trining it earlier this year. You've also got Saturn that was kind of trining it last year. And over the next several years, being an Aquarius is going to be really significant, because now the eclipses are going to be starting in your sign. So this almost registers similar to that of like a Libra rising, because you're a leader Virgo, where you'll see the eclipses that are going to begin next year are going to start happening in your 5th house, which can be about dating, romance, children, younger people. And I think the eclipses in the 5th house will definitely bring in a lot more kind of like creative, romantic like energies. And you'll see now Saturn and Neptune continuing to go through your relationship house in Aries in the 7th, and it's now sextiling everything that you have got in the 5th house. And the Pluto transit's coming for your sun over this next year. Like, I'll go as far as saying I have a sneaky suspicion that you're looking for more of having like a solid friendship and like really getting to know somebody before you commit to them again. And I think that this is about feeling like you're finding like your best friend. You're not just finding like a partner, and also realizing that you need either more freedom in love, or you're looking for more excitement, or there is a sense of maybe being more open-minded to like what that person is like, or maybe their age. And you're not wanting to settle when it comes to like 5th house stuff, sex, intimacy, feeling the romance, having fun. And I feel like it's going to be nice to start having those eclipses in your 5th house that are sextiling the 7th. And it looks like Juno's going to be kind of transiting along your Venus as well. So yeah, it's like you got the first one behind you, and even having like your 7th house lord in the 8th, like there was most likely going to be like a lot of like psychological or like financial complications with the first marriage. And it most likely, at least in my opinion, was probably not going to last because of some of the, squares and aspects that it's kind of making in your chart. So hopefully the next one that kind of comes through is going to be, I think a little bit more of like a better match for you. See you for my solar return reading in 27. happy to do it for you. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of like insight, and it sounds like you were kind of right in alignment with your North Node return. All right, let's take a look at Raina. Let's see what Raina has to say. What's up, Raina? All right, Raina says, hey Candace, after resigning from my previous position in August, I am now prepared to begin my job search on December 19th. When do you expect me to go back to work? Is this a long-term opportunity, or should I be concerned? Okay, so you resigned in August.
Can you shrink the chart a little bit?
Let me make that a little bit smaller here. Is that okay? I can make it smaller. Hold on. Sorry. How's that? Okay. Sorry, I'm playing with my chart size. All right. So she wants to know about work. She wants to know what the deal is after resigning from her previous position in August. Now you're prepared to begin your job search on December 19th. I'm wondering, why are you wanting to start that day? When do you expect me to go back to work? Prepared to begin my job search on the 19th. You want to expand on that? I'm going to go look at the 19th and see what's going on. Are you saying it's because of the new moon? So you will have a Mercury goes direct. All right, here's my thought, right? In this job market, I wouldn't wait for retrogrades or eclipses or things to dictate or determine when you go looking for a job. If Mercury is making decent aspects and if Mercury is connected to your 6th and your 10th house, then even if it's retrograde or shadow, I mean, you can still go looking. I wouldn't wait for that new moon. I would actually say, if this were me, because Mercury is going to go retrograde in your 6th, which is about your work and your schedule, and it's going to come into conjunction with Mars, it means that if you put in an effort and if you're, kind of taking a look and seeing what's out there, you may be surprised to find that you could find work a lot quicker than what you anticipated. Now, I'm not saying that you should take any job offer that comes your way. Obviously, be cautious and be careful with the Mercury retrograde. Make sure the schedule is going to work for you. Make sure you go and see the office or you meet the people or you really like the company that you're working for. But maybe it's just me. I'm going to be using this Mercury retrograde because Mercury is going to retrograde back into Scorpio. It'll conjunct Venus. It's going to trine Saturn. It's going to trine Jupiter. I mean, some of the aspects that you already had like that had been kind of playing out throughout this last week leading up to it. So if you were really going to go looking for a job, in my opinion, you would have started on the 23rd of October. That was a week ago. Now, what you can do is you can wait until we get to here. And I would say when the new moon in Scorpio happens, which is going to be on the 19th of November. I wasn't sure if you said, because your comment said December, right? On December 19th. Maybe that was an error. Maybe you meant November. But I would say, yeah, the new moon on the 19th is not a bad idea because you've got the new moon right on the cusp of your 6th house of work, ruled by Mars. Mars is in your house of work. It's trining your moon. And then you're also going to see that the Mercury, Moon, Venus stuff is trining Jupiter in your money house and Saturn in your 10th. Okay, I figured. I was like, December? No, December is a new moon. So even if you go looking around the 19th on, you may not start anything until closer to the new moon that's going to be in Sagittarius. But I really like these aspects. And I really like also when Mercury is going to be back in Scorpio because of that trine to Saturn and Neptune. Probably the best days are going to be like the 19th and the 20th. And then you're also going to see some good days around the 28th and the 29th because of where the moon is. And then you start to kind of lose it, but you'll have a little bit more of like the moon in Cancer, trine Mercury and Scorpio direct around December 7th. So these are the days that you're going to see the best kind of communication opportunities. I mean, if you want to wait until the new moon in Sag, I wouldn't. I mean, yes, it's a new moon in your 6th house, but the lunation is going to dictate and determine how things are going to go. And even though a new moon in Sagittarius is generally pretty positive and optimistic, and it is in your 6th house of work, the problem is look at the sun and the moon and Venus. What are they all doing? They're squaring Saturn. That's not pretty fortuitous for, doing it. It actually seems to indicate that if you do wait until December and you go, okay, now I'm going to start looking, you're going to go, oh, I was so sure this was going to be the best timing and like I was going to find something and it was going to be a good time to do it. And like now I'm feeling like it's taking longer or, Saturn can be about a difficulty communicating and connecting with people. So I would rather you start in November. If you want to take it into next year, then you're looking at maybe doing something like when planets are going into Capricorn and it's beginning to sextile Saturn in your 10th house. So that's going to be happening like right around mid-January. So I'm looking at like the new moon on January 1st where there's a new moon sextile Saturn and Neptune. And it's also trining your sun. It's also opposing Jupiter. And then you're also going to have a Mercury retrograde that's going to be in Pisces. It'll be taking place what looks like in your 10th house. So if you were to wait, then, and Mercury is not very strong in Pisces. That's the other thing. You want to have Mercury in places where it can get stuff done. Mercury in Sag, not ideal. Mercury in Capricorn, great, because that's going to sextile your 10th house. It's going to trine your sun. Mercury in Aquarius, it's okay, but it's not making a lot of positive aspects in your chart. And then when Mercury gets into Pisces in February going into March, it's in a sign where it's debilitated because it's more emotional, and then it's going to go retrograde. And as a Cancer rising, regardless of, what degree your rising sign is, the reality of the situation is Saturn and Neptune are going to come into conjunction in mid-February in your 10th house. That's kind of a big deal because that means that there is like the beginning process of a brand new career or job or something that's kind of being initiated. When this happens, it's trining your Jupiter, which is good for money. It is going to be sextiling Pluto in the 8th house, which is good for financial negotiations. Mars is the ruler of that conjunction, and that's going to be in the 9th. So it kind of mentions to me like, or reminds me of a possibility that, it's like, well, do I go and do certification? Am I training for something? Am I going to be traveling for work? Am I going to take a job that's going to require me to travel or have to go back to school? She says, you mentioned I was going to get something in February. Yeah, I mean, that would be because in February, when these planets are all going into Pisces, even though there's a Mercury retrograde coming, it's trining Jupiter. And it's also going to involve Mars. So it's really up to you. If you feel like confident that you have the time, I mean, I'm not a fan of starting anything around the new moon in Sag. I would either say start now and then, follow some of the transits that are going to happen in Capricorn season and then also some of the transits that are going to be happening like in mid-February. But I don't think you have to wait that long. I wouldn't wait. And I especially don't like all that Sag stuff that's squaring your sun. Like, no. Because all of this stuff is going to start squaring Saturn and it's going to square your sun. And what you're going to hear for like a Virgo is that there's going to be family stuff going on or issues going on revolving around dealing with home or living situation, or in your case, it's your 6th house. So it might be you're really trying to work, but you're kind of burning yourself out. So I would stick to some of those dates. And I would say this to anybody, like the Mercury retrograde, even though Mercury retrograde is not fun, when it comes back into Scorpio under that Scorpio new moon, I think it's going to be, we have better information. We're more kind of aware. And I think of like a Cancer rising horoscope where, Mercury and Mars are going to meet when the Mercury retrograde begins. And it's going to be like, oh, I thought I had more time. And it's like, no, I'm going to start looking now. So maybe watch for that, or what kind of comes up, or maybe something that you find that you're interested in, even though you didn't really think you'd be looking at, might be happening around like the 9th of November, maybe till like about the 20th. Hopefully that's helpful for you and giving you some insight. Hope you find a good position. What are you looking for? All right, so we've got up next, we've got Amanda, accounting. Well, good luck, especially with all the Scorpio stuff going on right now. You could easily find something in accounting. So I've got Amanda that's up next, and Jennifer, Yolette, Dwan, Quanchenta. Did I say your name right? Jacqueline. I've got all of you guys. So if you guys want to get in the queue, scan the QR code. Make sure you put in your birth information for me with your question. Please and thank you. All right, let's take a look at Amanda. All right, so Amanda says January 2nd, 85, 11:44 p.m. in Atlanta. She says, hey girl, okay, so after this most recent breakup, approximately 2 weeks ago, can you look at my chart and let me know what you see for the remainder of the year and timing of future love and relationships, hoping for some good news to restore my faith. All right, well, let's take a look. So we got to see something positive going on with Jupiter. I would say right now, considering that, Jupiter is direct and Jupiter's gonna be direct until about like I think the 10th or the 11th of November, that is full steam ahead for relationships. It is also simultaneously in a trine with Saturn in your 7th. So the one way to enhance, connection and relationships is you got to tap into like Jupiter in your whole sign 11th, which means you got to go out, you got to meet people, you got to socialize, you got to be where the people are, you got to go to parties, you got to hang out with friends, not just be out there looking to meet somebody. It's like you're actually doing things and kind of trying to connect with your friends, or putting yourself in some kind of group dating situation or setting. So like speed dating or like, you know, local meetups and stuff where there's going to be singles and things like that you can do. And when we look at your natal Jupiter, Jupiter is in opposition to Jupiter right now. So it does kind of seem like with Jupiter trine Saturn, you're feeling confident enough to date. Jupiter sextile your moon, you're open to kind of socializing and meeting new people. The Jupiter opposition is just kind of like, how do I do it? Which way am I going? So I would want to see other stuff other than just Jupiter. Like for example, in this next month, Saturn's going to go direct. And that will also give you a little bit more insight as to whether or not like you're meeting people of like any real value. It looks like by the end of November, Saturn's direct, and then by about mid-December, Neptune is direct, and then they are both going to come back into conjunction with your descendant. So that means that power is like rearing ready to go. It could mean that it brings in people that are spiritual or people who are really creative, or maybe you're meeting people who are into photography or design or like music, art. But this is also the time that you got to kind of keep your eyes open, because you could be meeting individuals who are kind of ghosty, or they're not consistent, or there can be some issues with people not being reliable or having like drug or alcohol, psychological issues, okay? Because that, you know, the 29 is always like drama. So even though they're direct, they can still kind of kick up some problems. And it looks like right around the end of December to the beginning of January, they're sitting on your descendant, and then it's over. Then it's done. You're going to see Saturn and Neptune align in February. You're good. That energy will still be in your 7th house though. So this is why I say listen to like Libra rising predictions, because you're still going to see the Saturn Neptune energy, but it's going to be in a different way. And when those two align, it looks like Mars is the ruler, and Mars is going to be sitting conjunct your Venus. So there's two different scenarios that can play out here. One is it could mean that you meet somebody through work who ends up becoming relationship oriented, or because there's changes with your job or something like that. The other is through a 6th house way. So you're going to the laundromat, you're going to the gym, you're going to a new health food store, you're going and doing something that's kind of like physical activities, and then you meet someone. But the fact that this is meeting there with Venus and Mars that are in conjunction and an eclipse makes me feel like, yeah, there's going to be a change to either your work, your daily routines, or your health habits, which might lead to you meeting someone. And then on top of that, you know, they could be younger, right? Aquarius could be somebody who's like younger that's kind of coming in. Next year also, you will see Jupiter come into a trine with Saturn, which won't be until later in the year. But Jupiter will go into Leo in your 11th house, and it'll start trining Saturn in your 7th of relationships. And that's also a pretty fortuitous time in relationships. So that's pretty strong in August. You know, I think you just have to get out of the Mercury retrograde and some of the eclipses that are going to come up in March, just to make sure whoever you've met is going to be like for sure, and they're going to kind of stick around. But I think between Jupiter trining Saturn, which is going to be, I think, giving you longer lasting results in relationships, the North Node hitting your Venus, like a destined kind of fortuitous time for you to meet someone, you know, an eclipse being on top of your Venus in February is also kind of indicating it's going to bring in like a prominent love or like a relationship. All things seem to kind of be aligning at the same time. Probably with Jupiter in opposition to Jupiter is it's trying to get you out of the house. If you've got your Sun, Neptune, and your Jupiter in the 4th house, you're a little bit of like a homebody, especially with that Taurus moon. So I think that this is about getting out of the house and not feeling like you're stuck in the past, or you're too rigid with like your routine, or like emotionally becoming super attached to like being home or being in a certain place. But there's for sure some energies. And the eclipse also that you just had on your ascendant here in September, like, that's not, I mean, this one, that's not going to fully reveal itself until we have the eclipses in March. So it is possible when the Pisces eclipse in March comes through, when that becomes a full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo, which will be March 3rd, that's going to give you more clarity about what's going on in relationships. And look at the ruler, right? So the ruler is Mercury, and it's retrograding in your 7th. So she says, yes, I like home. I work from home too. It's good that you work from home because you got your Sun in the 4th house, and you know, you've also got Jupiter there too, and it's in Capricorn. But the challenge is like your Jupiter is obviously debilitated in Capricorn, and it's the ruler of your seventh. So the more that you're staying home, you know, it's not helping you meet anyone. And I think with Jupiter in opposition is you have to kind of get out and you have to go and meet people in like real world ways. Eventually when you get into a relationship, you guys can like share a home space and it'll be fine. But Saturn's requiring you to work harder to get to know people or try to meet people. And I think Neptune is also just kind of saying like, don't go for people who, you know, are going to seem like too good to be true, or be mindful of people who you're just kind of dating and meeting because it's convenient, not because it's like somebody who you're really like attracted to or you really want to get to know. Because the convenience factor, I think with like some of the aspects to your Jupiter is like, oh, they live close to me, or like they'll come visit me, or like they'd like to stay in too. And I would be like, actually Saturn and Neptune and Aries next year would be really good for you to like be, you know, meeting somebody who's really into fitness, or meeting somebody who's really into hot yoga or hunting, or maybe they're into like painting and like design, you know, but they're doing it like actively. It's not something they do is like, oh, they're just relaxing. Like they like to actually really physically kind of get into it. And that would kind of rile up your, your Neptune a little bit. Saturn and Neptune's coming into a square with your Neptune. That's the thing about what's going on right now is like, not only is Saturn and Neptune sitting on, you know, your Pisces descendant, where it's trying to put an end to an old way of dating or like kind of flushing old people out, but when it goes into Aries, then it's going to square Neptune, and you're going to end up meeting somebody who's going to be, I think, a little bit more bold and direct and a little bit more spicy, and they're going to be like, why are you home all the time? You know, they're like, that Saturn Neptune squaring your Saturn is like, well, why don't you want to get out and go do things with me? And I would say those eclipses in your sixth house are going to be good, because it's going to help you kind of rework your schedule and be a little bit more physically active. And it may be like a nice alignment that you're going to have with another person. So hopefully that's helpful. You'll have to let me know if somebody pops in, but I can definitely see it getting much easier once we get to the new year. All right, let's see, who else do we have here? My little list. Okay, so we've got Prue, which is funny because I'm pretty sure I know who this is, even though your name doesn't match. Let's see if I can find it. No, it's not coming up. I'm just trying to remember. Let's see, what was the name under? Well, I'll just create a new account for you. But I know who you are. All right, 123.95, and that was at 9:53. There we go. All right, this is for you, Prue. So I have you here, Aries rising, Sun in Aquarius, and Moon in Libra. Okay, my first formal observation at the new teaching gig is going to be on either 11/12 or 11/13. Not sure how serious it will be, and I know most new teachers score on the lower side early on, but I want to do my best. Okay, let's take a look. Happy Halloween. It's me. What's up, Rachel? She's got a pajama guy update. Ooh. All right, let's take a look. So we're looking at the 12th or the 13th, and you want to know what that's looking like in terms of a review. Okay. So we've got 11/12, which is the Sun is in Scorpio. Obviously, Mercury is retrograde, but it's retrograde in conjunction to your Jupiter. So the timing of, you know, there being some kind of review over your teaching and your expertise and your performance and your qualification and that observing energy of Jupiter makes perfect sense. That Mercury-Mars conjunction is trining your ascendant, by the way. So that's not necessarily a bad aspect. And it's also sextiling your sun. Saturn's going to deal more with work, and Saturn's retrograde. So the fact that, you know, the sun's building into a trine with Saturn. We've got the moon that is going through Virgo that day. Well, depending on what time. Actually looks like it's more likely to be Leo. Let's back this up a little bit. Moon Mars, okay, so this is just about taking your time, not rushing anything. And the sun and the moon are going to square. I know you don't have control over what day they come, but I feel like you got to pick your poison with this one. You can either go and do this on the 12th, which, you know, at the very least, you're going to have the sun trine the north node, and it's building into a trine with Saturn. The only other issue is that on the 12th, the sun and the moon are going to square. And then if it goes into the 13th, then the moon is going to be in Virgo, and it's going to square Mercury and Mars. And it's also going to oppose your Saturn. I mean, do you have a say in which day it may potentially be? Ugh, I don't know what's worse. I mean, sun is trining there. The moon's going to conjunct the south node. And even as like the moon's going through Virgo, so it's going to be about kind of more like nitpicky energy, or kind of like performance review related things, or like looking at how you kind of go through the, you know, the motions of stuff. It's picking up the energy of Mercury retrograde conjunct Mars. I think the only thing that's positive is that it trines your ascendant and it's conjunct Jupiter. It's basically saying, like, I think you're going to be seen as somebody who's taking your time, thinking things through. There can be some scheduling issues that can come up, or they're telling you it's going to be one of these 2 days and it may not be. And I would say that just because the Mercury retrograde over your Jupiter and your Pluto is happening. And also you're seeing the moon going through the south node in the 6th. Like, I feel like something may be rescheduled, or they tell you they're going to come one day and they come a different day, or they're going to be there at a certain time and then they come at a different time. Like, something seems like changeable because the moon's going to square Mercury and Mars. I got to request days and I picked the 12th or the 13th. Okay. Let's hope it's the 12th, because the 12th is a little bit easier to navigate than the 13th. And I do think that even if it is the 13th, there's going to be some scheduling issues, or there's going to be something that's going to change. Because look, moon conjunct the south node, change with the schedule. Based off of what? Mercury retrograde conjunct Mars. Hey, actually, we need to switch days with you, or can we come at a later time? Or we thought we were going to be here later, but we're here early. You know, that kind of stuff is going to happen. So if you're leaning into the trine with your ascendant, you just have to approach it and you're going to be like, yeah, I'm ready. Sure. Well, I'm ready whenever you guys are. Right? Let's go. Yep, let's do it. Like, there's no hesitation. There's no delay. It's just kind of like, yep, let's keep it moving. And you may find that also this person is not very, like, I'm not going to say not friendly, but not like really like chatty or communicative. And I don't know how soon you get your review, but the fact that Mercury is going to retrograde over your Pluto means that there's going to be some pretty key insights or feedback. And then Mars is going to hit Jupiter. So it's going to be around the 15th of November through what appears to be the 20th that you would like actually get that feedback. And that's because, you know, Mercury is going to retrograde. It's going to hit Pluto. I don't really think it's going to be anything negative, though, because this is all trining your ascendant. You know, you might be assuming or anticipating it's going to be worst case scenario, but the sun, which is going to be about your performance, is trining Saturn and Neptune and Jupiter the whole way. The only kind of rough spot is Saturn. The sun will start coming into a square with Mars. But I think that, you know, could there have been a better day? Sure. If they contact you and they say that they want to reschedule it, or they're wondering if they can do it like later, I would say, sure, I'll do it later. And I would rather you do this when the sun is coming into conjunction with your Jupiter, and Mercury is going direct. So It would be better to do it around the end of November, like around the 30th. So if in the off chance they have to switch days, or they like, hey, actually we're going to come a little bit later, try to do it around that time, because that's going to be a better day for your chart. But I don't see any issues at all. If anything, you know, the North Node coming into conjunction with Saturn is being super dedicated and committed to like maybe your lesson plans, you know, what you're reviewing, what you're getting ready to kind of put together, what presentations you're giving. And then all the planets that are getting ready to go through your 10th house in December. I mean, obviously you're a teacher, so you're going to have some time that's going to be off of work here, but it looks like you're going to be very busy, like right out the gate at the beginning of the year. No, I don't see it coming across awful. The Mercury retrograde starts right around your Jupiter. And Jupiter's at an 8. So it's going to be about them giving you some feedback and things that they're observing that sure you could tweak or change, but I think you're also going to get some positive feedback, because Mercury is going to be, well, this is what he did that we did like, and you know, this is some of the things that we felt like was orchestrated very well, or was organized very well, or you know, like some positive points that you have to some of the work that you're doing. So no, I don't see it being terrible. You're me. I mean, you have the holidays off, right? Like I don't know when you guys usually break. I forget, but there's, I mean, a ton of planets that are moving into the top part of your chart. That's usually like really gearing up to be like super like busy and working. But I don't think you're going to be, you know, working at that time, but you may be working on things and putting stuff together for when you come back. I mean, that's possible for sure. And that's really obvious with like then the next new moon that you're going to have in Capricorn, which will be in January. But no, I mean, the timing of going and getting the review is very timely. I would have rather it been before the 9th. But it is what it is, and you know, I would just anticipate there being some kind of scheduling changes revolving around when they actually come in. Hopefully it goes well for you. You have to let me know what goes on. All right, I've got, let's see. I've got Jennifer Cerrito. You're welcome. Yolette, Dwan, Conchita, well, I guess it says Nicole Rose. So Nicole, Jacqueline. Am I missing anybody? Rachel, Ariel, Nay in the Bay, and Gemma. All right, if you hear your name, that means that I've got you. I need to take a second and put in all of these charts if you guys don't mind. So if you guys want to grab a snack or something to drink, go ahead. I've got a handful of charts I got to kind of plug in here, and then we'll pick up where we left off. Let's see. For Nicole Rose, I don't have any info on you. It just says, what does the next year have in store for me? Karmic, Saturn return, relationships, career, healing, anything that stands out. I need your date of birth information. And I need you to pick one topic that is going to be more of interest, because I can't get into everything. Unless you want me to pick, then I can pick. But I need to see your chart first. Let's see. What's up, Rosie? All right, got Rachel in there. Ariel. Thanks for your patience, guys. We had a ton of people. In the Bay. All right, let me play catch up on the chat, and then we'll get going and we'll see what you guys want to know. And it looks like we're going to start with Jennifer, and then Yolette, and then we will have Dwan. All right, let me play catch up here. Riley, I think I might have it. I'll check. Thank you. You have a gift. You're always able to read charts in real time. Blows my mind. You're always right. I appreciate it. I love watching these. Maybe one day I'll be brave enough to get a reading for my long question at some point. Nice to see you, Rosie. All right, let's get into it. Let's look at Jennifer. And if you guys are wanting to get a reading, scan the QR code and you guys can get in and join the queue before we call last call. Jennifer says, we had a reading together on September the 9th, and true to what you saw then, an opportunity in an alternate field just crossed my path today. I'm currently in apparel business, but this one connects to the residential construction world through someone I hired for a home project. I'd love your quick insight on whether the timing and the energy around this opportunity looks aligned for me, both personally and professionally. Born September 15th, 69 in Sarasota, Florida, and that was at 2:26 p.m. All right, Jennifer. Well, sounds like it's right on time. Very interesting that Venus is touring your Placidus 10th house right now. So it is bringing up some opportunities that could be new job things. And I think the reason why it came in is a couple of things. One is Venus is currently transiting the moon in your second. So it talks about changes and kind of fluctuations with how you could make money and like the groups or associations you could be working with. You also happen to have Venus that's sextiling Venus, which is good for increasing the likelihood of new relational opportunities and making money. Uranus is just tiptoeing on the cusp of your 6th house, which could mean that you're like, maybe I could pivot and kind of do something different. And the astrology right now is very strong for Jupiter, because Jupiter rules your chart and it's direct. And it's in the 7th house of others, and it's in the sign that deals with property and real estate. So right now, Venus is squaring that, where it's like, oh, it means that if I like work and connect and collaborate with another person, like there's another way of like making money. Mercury, you're going to hear as a Sag rising, is connected to, your 10th house of career. And currently Mercury is in shadow, so it means it's getting ready to retrograde, and it's going to dip into Sag here over the next week. And then around the 9th of November, it's going to retrograde back into Scorpio. And what I would be watching for is when Mercury is coming back into Scorpio, trining Jupiter and trining Saturn. And Saturn in your 3rd house is some kind of community work or things that could be more like communications based or things involving property. It's your whole sign, 4th house. And we need to see something really strong going on with your natal Venus for there to be like a lot of progress in your career. So Uranus isn't squaring it. Saturn isn't trining it. You'll see next year Jupiter will conjunct your Venus, and you'll see some trines to Saturn. I mean, I think that if you've got, you know, Mercury and Venus in your 10th house and it's in Libra, something that's like relational or dealing with, you know, sales or, you know, having some kind of like client base is not necessarily a bad idea. And you're also going to see the Mercury retrograde come back into these more kind of fortuitous aspects around the end of November. This is Mercury conjunct Venus. Like, I don't know if this is going to be like a woman connecting with you again, being like, hey, let's talk. Let's see if you'd be a good fit, or like, do you want to meet the team? Or are you interested in like working with people? And that's going to trine Saturn in your 3rd house of community work, or you could do stuff remotely, and it's going to trine Jupiter in the 7th house of clients. So I'd be more focused on like, can you sit down, have a meeting, meet the team, you know, get a little bit of a better idea of whether or not this is going to be a good match for you. Sagittarius risings are going to do the best if they're keeping an open mind, because not only does Mercury deal with your career, it also deals with your relationships, and it's retrograde conjunct Mars. So a lot of you guys are having to be willing to like let go of, oh, I only work for myself. I only work a certain way. Or maybe being more open and like open-minded. It sounds like you are, to like collaborating with new people so that way you could change the direction that you're going in. I don't think it's a bad idea. I mean, I will tell you that it's a good time to be thinking about something different, because down the road next year, you're going to have Uranus come into Gemini, and you're going to have some kind of change happen in May. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but May and July look like 2 months where there's going to be some fluctuation or changes with your schedule. You're needing more flexibility. And then next year, Jupiter is going to come in conjunction with your Venus, which is good for money. And it's going to trine Saturn. And Saturn, it rules money, and it's in your 4th house of home, and doing something that's like more independent or more creative. I don't really feel like it's necessarily a bad direction to go in. I think, you know, if joint finances and money is ruled by your moon and it's in the 11th in Scorpio, I would just want to know the ins and outs of like how you're getting paid, and is it commission based? Do you get a flat salary? Is there kind of bonuses? Is there incentives there? I would use the retrograde to kind of talk about that, but I think that this could actually be a very like doable direction that you can kind of go in. But remember, next year, Saturn's going to go back into Aries, and it's going to oppose all the planets that you have in Libra in the 10th. So you're going to want to be able to have more flexibility and the ability to work independently or work from home and not feel like you have to show up in a physical place. Use the, kind of mid to the end of November to kind of get to meet some of the people who would be situated there and see if it's going to be a good fit. And also just make sure that you're going to have a lot of like independence in the process, because those Uranus transits in your 6th house next year say that you're going to need to be feeling like you have control of your schedule, or where you're working, or how you're working, or maybe just knowing that you're being given kind of projects and things that you're kind of doing independently, and not feeling like you have to have somebody who's kind of like watching you, right? But I do think it's good timing, yeah. Let's see. Let me know if you have any questions on that, Jennifer. All right, so I've got, now we're not doing the live readings tomorrow because it's Halloween, so I just decided to do it tonight. All right, so let's pull up Yolette. And it looks like you have questions about you and your husband. Yolette says, would like to know the good and the bad and what's in store for us with this full moon and career, me, and health husband. Also starting to work on my side business again. Thank you. Synastry relationship for Yolette, who's August 13th, 84, 6:05 a.m. And then husband is January 25th, 86. Does that say 85 or 86? 86. Let me change that. And that was at 12:53 a.m. and that was in Orange, New Jersey. So let me make sure that says 86. You're welcome. So let's look at this. So she wants to know what's in store for us with the full moon, career, health. Okay, so for you, the full moon is going to be taking place in Taurus. So this will be on November 5th. Obviously, it's in your 10th house, so it's very work related. So being a Leo rising, this is kind of like that kind of major conclusion, completion moment of the new moon that was seated 6 months ago in Taurus season in the spring. Obviously, I'm keeping an eye on where it's making positive aspects, and it is trining your Venus and also your Mercury in the second house of, money, resources, self-esteem. So that's nice. It is trining the South Node, so it does represent going back to something that you have worked on or making some changes revolving around your finances or your values and how that connects to work. It does oppose your Saturn, so there's kind of like this expansion and contraction where you're like, I'm trying to do this, but I've got, family members going through that at home, or some challenges that you're dealing with because Saturn represents your partner, where you're like, I'm having to do things like they can't right now, or like they're limited in some way. Or you kind of spreading yourself thin, going back and forth. This sextiles your moon. It's a wide trine, but it does trine your Jupiter. So when you say, okay, I'm very work related right now, and I also want to get back to something that I was doing, good. It's trining Jupiter retrograde. So it's about how you feel about going back to some of those projects. A lot of it's about making the time, and also like not having really high expectations right off the bat of some major financial payoff. It's like you're gonna have to put more time into it and kind of revamp it. And I think that's a good idea for you to be thinking about that, because Mercury's about to retrograde in your 5th house. So you could go back to projects and things that you've worked on in the past, get some home and family stuff in order, and then when you're feeling more solid, at the end of November or December, you can proceed forward with some of these creative projects. You can also wait until like the South Node comes into conjunction with your Mercury or your Venus. So there's going to be other times for you to be able to do that. Oops. Hold on. So another time that would be really beneficial to get more serious about work would be like end of December, early January, when all these planets go into your 6th house. Really, really focused on routines and timelines, and you feel like you've gotten past the holidays and now you can focus on work. And then you're going to have another opportunity when the South Node hits your Venus to go back to a project that you kind of put on the back burner. So that will be happening for you in April. So even if you wait until next spring, you could do that. And there will be eclipses that are going to be impacting those angles. But looks like you're going to be really open to the idea of juggling more than one thing. Like in the next year, Uranus will sit on top of your North Node at a 3 in Gemini. So it's like, I can do this and I can do that. And I wonder if you're going to have a client-based business, or if you're going to get your spouse or your partner involved in helping you with the business, because Uranus represents that person, or it could be bringing in clients. So I wonder what kind of a business that is. And then for your husband, who's more looking at what's going on with health, he's a Scorpio rising. Mercury has recently come into shadow on top of his Mars. That's his chart ruler. Okay, so, inflammation, swelling, fevers, anything that deals with heat, issues connecting to like purging and purifying, or like clearing things out of the guts or like the bowels. That's very much Scorpio. And Mercury is about detoxing. It's also about communication and psychological themes. So as it's been moving side by side with Mercury and Mars, it almost makes me feel like there's been a lot of mental stress or money stress or other things that can be like manifesting like health related ailments in the body. And because of the shadow, it's coming up, right? Also next year, I mean, this is like way down the road, but like, next year in September, October-ish, there's going to be a Venus retrograde Venus is going to turn retrograde right on his ascendant. So knowing that he's had like Mars retrograde in this last year, which could have took him out of work for a period of time, Mercury retrograde, which was about, whether or not he was feeling well enough to get back to work, or if he was making career changes. And then he's going to have this Mercury retrograde. I mean, like, I would really keep an eye on his health. You know, Scorpio risings, you guys got to pay attention to what's going on. Because if you've got a Mercury retrograde in your first house and then you've got, you know, Chiron in your 6th and Saturn and Neptune retrograding out of your 6th, you just got a little slice of like, hey, you have to take really good care of your health. So I don't know exactly what's going on with him. There's other things in the mix, right? Pluto's been conjunct his Mercury. That's also bringing up emotional, psychological, or, you know, breathing issues. And now it's getting closer to his sun, and it looks like in this next year it's going to hit his sun. So that's a radical change and transformation for his living situation and also his identity, possibly needing to transform where he's living, or some major, you know, kind of changes with relationships with like men and like father figures in the family. Specifically, the son could be like a brother, a father, a parent. He was out for work, went back in April, May for a while. So, I mean, you know, I think the Mercury retrograde over the next month is just about really paying attention to his habits. And then what you're going to find is, you know, as Pluto's getting closer and closer to his sun, I mean, it's going to dramatically change something about his career. And it's almost like trying to get him into a situation where he's doing some kind of work from home, right? I mean, I don't know if that's what he can do, or if he's closer to home, or if he's going to be starting or working in a family business. So it's interesting that I looked at your chart. I'm like, is he going to help you like with setting up this business? And I look at his chart and I'm like, oh, well, Pluto's going to hit the sun. Let's change the career. And then it's going to hit Venus, and it's about changes with the relationship. This is somebody who I would say, like if this were me, I would make an investment in sitting down and getting an actual like hour-long reading. You know, it's not often that I say that, but with Pluto hitting his sun, Pluto hitting his Venus, Pluto squaring his ascendant, a retrograde right over his Pluto, next year is going to get very colorful in terms of his health and his habits and how he's thinking and communicating and relating to people around him. And go and learn about, you know, Pluto transit the sun, Pluto square the nodes, Pluto, you know, conjunct Venus, because those are all the things that he's going to be kind of dealing with. And because that's all the focal points of the nodes in his chart, the next year is going to be a huge kind of major shift. And I don't know if it's going to be changes where you guys are living or what's going on with family relationships, but this would need quite a bit of time to break all of that down, in my opinion. But for right now, you know, we're just preparing for the next couple of months while Saturn and Neptune's back in his 5th house. It's more about focusing on inspiration, creativity, you know, if you guys have kids, children. And then next year in January, Saturn and Neptune will go back into his 6th house where it's going to feel like the grind. And he'll be in Saturn, trine Saturn. So that'll kind of help him. And Saturn will be sextiling his sun. That'll help him. But a lot of those Pluto squares look pretty gnarly. Has he been somebody who's had any like mental health issues, or does he have a lot of drama with like a sibling? I'm looking at like Pluto conjunct Mercury and the sun. Like, is there some sibling related issues, or is there something going on revolving around breathing, or is it like mental health related stuff? So we're going to call last call. So if you guys want to get your reading, make sure you sign up. And then I'm going to look at the composite here because you were asking about the moon just in the composite chart. So obviously it's very work-oriented for you. The full moon is very relationship-oriented for him because it's in his 7th house and it opposes his Pluto and it squares the 4th house. So it's going to be a lot of communication stuff with family. And then together, you know, you're going to see this up-and-coming full moon in Taurus. No, there we go. The up-and-coming full moon in Taurus is going to be right conjunct your guys' composite moon, pretty close to the North Node, in opposition to your sun. So 8th house, intimacy, change, transformation, vulnerability, money stuff, ruled by Venus. Venus is coming into a conjunction with your Pluto. So it looks like the Taurus full moon is going to be very much talking about money, what you're spending, what you're budgeting, what you need to pay off, what you guys are bringing in, what your goals are. So it's very financial. The 8th house can be good because it means that you guys could be really hitting some of those financial goals. But it looks like over the next couple of weeks, you know, Mercury is going to retrograde from the 3rd house of communication back into the 2nd house of finances. You might be kind of talking about ways to save money, how you want to be handling situations revolving around traveling, revolving around vehicles. You guys might be going over like budgets and documents, like tax-related documents. She said, yes, battling mental health and sickle cell. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, his transit is lit up like a Christmas tree. It's because he's got Pluto square, you know, his Pluto square his nodes, Pluto square Venus, and Pluto on top of his Mercury and his Sun. So like the mental health stuff is definitely pretty prominent in his chart, and it would be a good idea for him to sit down with an astrologer and have them kind of, you know, talk to him and explain each and every one of those aspects, and then the transits, and then also look at his solar return and talk about what's going to happen, because in this next year Pluto's going to hit his Sun. So I'm more concerned about, you know, the impact that that's having for him with himself psychologically, and also like where he may be going through like a identity crisis, because he's like, I can't do the job that I used to do. It's just not me. And if that's what I've always done, then who am I? You know, because that's probably what's going to kind of manifest for him in this next year. So most of this is going to be relating to finances for you guys together. So pay attention to that. Look for the opportunities for you guys to talk about positive ways to be able to be looking at money and expenses and what you could be saving. And also finding ways to be better with like intimacy and kind of opening up to each other. But I don't know what you're planning on doing with your side hustle, but it may not be a bad idea to kind of link him into it if that's something that you really want to do, because both charts are really supportive of being able to kind of do some work together in some capacity. Hopefully that's helpful, and I hope that he's doing better health-wise. All right, we've got Dwan. Did I hear anything from Nicole Rose? We did. Can we? Sorry, everything on here is like flashing, so it's really hard for me to like keep up with the chat, because the chat has some like new update where it's like it goes to like an ad, so it's hard for me to see it. Thank you. All right, so I will take Dwan, and then we will take Nicole Rose. Let me plug her in now that I have her. $829.95. You're welcome, Yolette. All right, let's see. There we go. All right, December 14th, 88. In 7:16 a.m. Detroit, Michigan. Says, this Taurus full moon's lighting on my Jupiter and Taurus in the 6th house. Should I be expecting a money go up, a reality check, or both? Either way, I'm ready to cash in on whatever the universe is serving. I like that. Well, you can't go wrong with having a full moon that is going to be, you know, in some way, shape, or form close to your Jupiter, right? So that's pretty good. I think it's a little wide to be conjunct. I mean, it would need to be at least 18 degrees. So it's a little bit wide for it to be conjunct Jupiter. But in your whole sign, 5th house, yeah, I think you're going to see some of the themes of scheduling, you know, getting things done, focusing on health, but doing it in a comfortable, kind of pleasurable way. So it's like I'm cleaning up, but I'm, you know, making sure that I'm listening to music while I'm doing it, or I'm, you know, going to make sure that I'm enjoying working out, or I'm enjoying food prepping. And Venus is actually really kind of the star of the show, because she's the ruler and she's making aspects to all the outer planets. So with a full moon that's supposed to be in your whole sign 6, yeah, you're going to hear it's about work, work, and more work. And it might be, because Uranus is retrograding back. It's in conjunction with your Jupiter now. So you should naturally feel like some of these changes with your health and your habits and where you're working and how you're working. And your Jupiter's at a 28. So whether it's working from home, or if it's making time to get things done around the house, or if it's prioritizing your pets, or maybe you're gardening or cooking, that kind of stuff, Uranus is going to be bringing that up. So maybe like within a day or so, you know, after the full moon, when the moon's coming into conjunction with Jupiter and Uranus, you see more of it. But I think this is about adjusting your schedule and making more time to kind of get all your odds and ends done and be more productive and feel like you have time to socialize and see people more. Because Venus in the 11th house is like, I want to go to parties, I want to see my friends, I want to go out to dinner, I want to have, like kind of girls' night or gatherings. And it's really helping you kind of finalize this Uranus-Jupiter shakeup where you're, finishing up, kind of having some breaks and changes with your schedule and your habits. Maybe finding a way to merge two of them where it's like I can work out with friends, or I am going to be, going and joining like a group where I can kind of, co-work and co-mingle with people. Or maybe you're getting involved in like health or fitness groups or things that are kind of connected to Taurus things. So it could be, cooking, working with herbs, jewelry making, anything that's connecting to the senses and like pleasure-related things. So I don't think it's necessarily going to be negative because you have quite a bit of Capricorn in your chart. So it is kind of slightly trining Neptune. It is coming into a sextile with your North Node. It's technically in your 5th house, which is more kind of like, this is what I've created and I want to share it with the world. Or, it could be about relationship fulfillment or kind of like falling in love. This is a full moon that I would keep my schedule a little light, not feel like I have to be kind of like limited with work, because I think there will be some social opportunities that could lead to some great creative breakthroughs. But also opportunities for like romance, right? It does oppose your Pluto. That's the only kind of like downside. I think that a full moon like this in opposition to Pluto is really going to be kind of illuminating. Like, we don't have to focus on the negative, the toxic, the hidden, the fear, the subconscious. That is 12th house to your ascendant, like whole sign. So I have found when people have like Pluto and Scorpio in the 12th, and they've got planets in Taurus in the 6th, it's like they don't realize that they become so accustomed to eating and living or working a certain way, and that it agitates them, or that there are certain like addictions that they have to eating, or like certain lifestyles, or even like overworking. And like a full moon coming in here can really highlight for you where that needs to be kind of dealt with and be taken care of. But yeah, the next day it will hit your Jupiter. So maybe if there is any kind of like overworking, you're like, well, I got a lot done. Or if there is a sense of like really focusing on, productivity or anything health related, it's like, okay, I learned how to kind of navigate this situation in a better way. Go back and think about what was seeded for you in like April, May of last year, because that new moon was, I remember it was like at 7 degrees. It was in your 5th house. And that was trining your south node, and it was sextiling your north node. Well, this one's coming in and it's trining the south node and it's sextiling the north node. Like, I think for a lot of Sag risings, it's like changes to your daily routines are going to happen. Maybe it's getting you out of feeling like you have to work a certain way or be super critical of yourself, and it's helping you do more of the emotional work or working from home, or feeling like you're more productive and you're getting your home in order, or you're helping support a family member or a parent, or you're maybe cleaning out your office, you're organizing your kitchen. That kind of stuff is really what kind of comes through. Reality check, not so much. It is a decan that deals with Virgo, though. It's a mercurial decan. So I would use this to clean up my diet, clean up my office space, and possibly even make a little bit more time for like fitness and wellness. But let me know what happens, what ends up kind of coming through for you with that full moon. How has it been having Uranus conjunct Jupiter? Have you like radically changed your like your eating habits or like your health habits? All right, we've got Nicole Rose. And then after that, we've got Jacqueline and Rachel. Thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. I know it takes a little bit longer to get through these. All right. Did she say specifically, Nicole, what you wanted, or you just want me to talk about what stands out? What does the next year have in store for me? Karmic cycle, Saturn, relationships, career, healing, anything that stands out. Well, obviously, if you're having, if you're just now kind of concluding or completing your Saturn return, I think that's prominent. I mean, I think you're going to feel a continuation of that a little bit. Usually when Saturn is about, 10 degrees away, that's when you start to feel the lessening effects. So by the time we get into like February, March of next year, when Saturn and Neptune fully move back into Aries and it's no longer within that 10-degree death grip of your natal Saturn, it's going to ease up. But you're still feeling it also because the North Node is still in Pisces. So it's moving away from your Saturn. So it's safe to say come the beginning of the year, you're starting to feel the Saturn return really start to kind of ease up. But then Saturn's going to be going into a new sign. I know it's been opposing all of your Virgo placements. It's really had to be all about you and your security and your stability, and probably realizing you had to pull away from certain individuals that weren't giving you what you needed. And when it goes into Aries, now Saturn and Neptune will oppose your Mercury. So it's going to be whether or not you're on the same page with relationships or individuals, especially when it comes to like values and intimacy related things. There can be a sense of you standing up for yourself and trying to be a little bit more bold with what you need, and you feel like other people might be going back and forth with you about vulnerability or about finances. I think the other thing that's also really important is like any transits that are happening to or around your Jupiter, because that's your chart ruler. And so it looks like, in the immediate next month or so, you're getting ready to have a Mercury retrograde right on your Jupiter. So this tells me you're either about to have a period in November where you're contemplating or considering like a status change, where you may change something significant about a relationship, going in or out of one, or like making a big career announcement. And it's going to retrograde conjunct Mars. So this is about spending money on travel, spending money on legal situations, spending money on publishing or on education. And I would say be very careful, because Mercury retrograde conjunct Jupiter with Mars can mean that, you're putting a lot of money into a professional kind of collaboration, or you're putting a lot of money or planning into a relationship. She says, that makes total sense. I've been focused on grounding my workout routine and getting organized lately. Good. That's good. Keep doing that during the full moon. But your Jupiter and other people are Mercury. So the fact that Mercury is going to retrograde over Jupiter tells me that maybe you're, deciding if you want to get back into a relationship. Maybe you're at a turning point in a relationship, trying to figure out what's next. But I would be watching pretty much November 5th until around about the 19th to see a big relationship or career shift. Be careful with traveling around that time too. And then next year, when the eclipses roll in, you're going to see the South Node on your Venus in February, which can be some major relationship kind of clearing out, needing to pay better attention to your health with it in your 6th house. And then you're going to have the South Node coming into conjunction with your Sun, also at a 6. So that's also health related or changes with relationships, which becomes very prominent closer to the beginning of May, when it's conjunct your Sun at 6 degrees. People will argue, in a whole sign chart, when they look at this, there's like a sense of being like, okay, separating from relationship or a partner, right? South Node on Venus and on the Sun. But could also mean that people from the past are coming back, or you're connecting with soulmates. Just really pay attention to your health habits when those eclipses kind of dip into your 6th. And it looks like Saturn will briefly oppose your Mercury. So there can be some like long distance relationship stuff going on. And also just needing to be a little bit bolder and more assertive about your financial situation and your values. Like knowing that you have Mars and the Moon tied to your whole sign 8th house means that there can be like other people who feel like they want control or insight, or they want to influence like your finances. And as Saturn and Neptune and Mars are coming into, your money house, the 2nd house in the spring, better with budgeting, kind of less impulsive when it comes to spending money, being mindful also of your value system. Like Saturn kind of being there is less is more. So it's very much like minimalist, just like only buying or investing what I absolutely need. You're going to be also, I think, making some big changes to, what your non-negotiables are in relationships. And so because you become more focused on your goals and like your security, it can ruffle some feathers when those planets are coming into opposition with stuff that you have in, in Virgo, as well as in Pisces. So there's like oppositions that are still going on here. That eclipse that we just had also in September was right on your Chiron. So it means that you've either been in a relationship where you're recognizing that somebody's wounded or hurt, or that you've pushed them away or they've pushed you away. Or maybe you're saying, you know what, relationships have brought me a lot of pain. I need to heal. And then you're going to be making some bigger relationship decisions, I think, in March of next year. And probably the most important transit is the fact that while all of this is taking place, thank God Saturn is trining your Jupiter. So you may have a lot of relational changes and maybe some changes at work, But Saturn trining Jupiter is saying, okay, if I'm committing to, you know, my goals, my values, and also like my building positive, healthy self-esteem, I'm going to know my worth and I'm not going to accept less. And like, I'll be employed and, you know, I'll be good with money and relationships can improve. But I think that I would start learning about Saturn transiting your natal second house now. Because February, March, and April, all of those planets, even though they're heavy hitters, are actually forming a positive trine to Jupiter, which the more you believe in yourself, the better that you'll actually succeed, especially when it comes to your career. And I think you're thinking about a lot of that stuff now, like over like the next month or two with the Mercury retrograde in your 10th. There's a lot of what direction am I going in? What do I want? Virgos are experiencing that too, but like especially with Sag being in the midheaven, you know, all of that energy going retrograde, getting ready to square Saturn in the first is a lot of what do I need to be changing and how am I, you know, letting some of my relational things kind of settle out before I make some bigger decisions with career. So watch for like the change up and like the reevaluation of your career, your status, or who you're working for or what you're working on. And that needs to get sorted out over the next month and a half. And then there's going to be more energy that's going in your favor by about the end of February, beginning of March 2026, when, you know, Mercury goes direct and planets are all in your first house, and it's almost going to feel like December through about March you're kind of going through like your cocoon phase, and then something new is reemerging. So embrace some of like the solitary time and like have a really solid spiritual routine or a meditation routine, or be spending time in nature, incorporating a lot of water, until you get to the spring of next year, and then you'll start to kind of feel things kind of reboot and come back online, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you, Nicole. All right, we've got Jacqueline, Rachel, and Ariel. Let's see. Jacqueline. Relationship and his pair of life mental, you think about everything you mentioned. You're welcome. There's still a lot of turning points, you know, and relationships are still going to be evolving, especially as you get into next year. Focus more on putting the relationship stuff on back burner and what's going on at work, because that's most important in the immediate near future. All right, Jacqueline is 9/22/89, and she says, can you help me see if there's anything going on in the area of my career? I'm currently working from home. It gives me the ability to be there for my kids and make money, but I'm not sure if I'm meant to be there forever. Okay, good question. So your career is Taurus, okay, 10th house, which is interesting that you're saying this because that's exactly where the full moon's about to be. So with this full moon in the 10th house, usually we see some kind of like wrapping up, completion, you know, it doesn't mean it has to be bad. Sometimes people have a full moon in the 10th house and they find a new job. Sometimes people have a full moon and they decide they're going to retire, or they're going to quit, or that, you know, they've reached their peak. So, you know, we're looking at the full moon here. It's trining the south node in the second house, where you're like, I'm showing up and doing what I have to do, but I'm also trying not to be totally like attached to what I'm doing for a living. Venus is the ruler. Venus is in the third house. So it does look like there's going to be a lot more kind of meetings, phone calls, like communication that's going on revolving around this. It's also trying to get you to open your mind, because Venus opposes Chiron to other things that you could explore or learn how to do, or other skills or trades that you could participate in. And we need to see something really strong going on with your natal Venus for there to be like a more permanent job change. So if I go way into the future, I do see some things. I think about how over the next several months, Uranus is going to go back into Taurus and it's in your 10th house, and maybe you feel a little bit more restless and you're wanting a change at work. I think about how there's now going to start being eclipses in your 6th house starting in February, which is going to be bringing up the themes of new scheduling, new techniques. There's going to be new staff. Maybe there's going to be new technology or software that you're going to have to implement starting in February. Then I think about how Uranus is going to leave your 10th house next year. So in theory, it stabilizes a little bit in April. And you're going to see Venus come into conjunction with Uranus in your 10th house, which could be a job change, or you pivoting between two things in the end of April, beginning of May. And then the big one is the Venus retrograde. Because Venus is going to get all the way up into conjunction with your natal Venus, and it's going to start to retrograde with Mercury. Go back and think about the fall of 2018. That was the last time you had a Venus retrograde there. Do you remember changing jobs, getting into one field, getting out of another, starting a job, ending a job, studying for something? Because this is going to be a similar cycle, and it's going to retrograde with Mercury right next to your Venus and your Pluto. So it means that there's possibly going to be some changes happening, revolving around, what you're getting paid, or maybe you're saying, hey, you know what, I want to find something that I love more. I want to have more, kind of like enjoyment. And Venus will actually retrograde back into Libra, not into your second house. It's going to stay totally in your third. And when it goes into Libra, it's going to trine your moon. So it does make me feel like there's going to be opportunities to kind of still do some type of remote work that you enjoy. I would also look forward to having, Uranus and Gemini for like the next several years. And there's going to be this sense of you going, all right, I could do this, and I'm, that's making money, but I've got something else I'm doing, training, or I'm learning, or I'm kind of developing on the side. She goes, yes, I left my job in banking and took a chance on a job that was commission based. Okay, so there you go. That was the retrograde. So something very similar is going to happen again. And the positive thing is that this time around, when the Venus retrograde happens, the ruler is going to be Mars, because that's the dispositor of Scorpio, and Mars is in Leo. She's going to be like, I'm going to take a chance. And likely it might be something that gets you out of the house, because the retrograde is going to start in your whole sign fourth, and it's going to go into your third. So it is possible that you're like, well, I might have to, work out of the house a little bit, or maybe there is something that's going to be changing. And I think a lot of people are going to be really, really shocked and surprised. Like, if you guys aren't seeing some of the job reports and stuff that's coming out, all the layoffs that they're doing, like Amazon and UPS and all these other companies that are going in the direction of having, more kind of automized things, like automation in terms of shipping and printing, and even technical jobs where you're inputting data and information. This retrograde is going to square Pluto. So it's going to be about the financial and the physical and psychological impacts of how technology is now impacting how people are making money. And it's going to be squaring Mars. So it's going to impact the markets. And it's going to oppose Chiron. So if this were me, I would be like, yeah, you want to be looking for jobs that aren't going to be replaced by a robot or a computer. Things that you can be doing that are going to, give you a little bit of job security. Certainly Saturn going in your 9th house in this next year wouldn't be a bad idea if you wanted to take a certification course or something that gives you a little bit more background in a specific area, or something that's going to make you stick out a little bit more at work. It would be a good idea. Okay, that makes sense. There's a ton. My company is transitioning to AI. See what I'm saying? There's pros and cons. In some ways, all this AI stuff is actually really great. And in other ways, there are so many people that are oh yeah, we're implementing all these programs. And then a bunch of people next year are going to find out, oh, you're being replaced. That's what's going to happen. So I would use, if this were me, and I don't know specifically what you do for your company, but I would start building new skills. I would either commit to having a side hustle or a passion project you're doing on the side while the retrograde's in your 5th, thinking about that, or waiting until planets get into your 6th house. And when they get into your 6th house, because Mars rules skills and also education, you could start the year off by doing some training or certification course. You could also do something like this when you get into the spring. So the end of April, beginning of May would be a good time to do it. And another good time to do it is when Jupiter is trining Saturn. And that's about having more insight and feeling better, I think acclimated, And Jupiter deals with change. So Jupiter hitting the ascendant, trining Saturn, means there's going to be some changes in the way that you're kind of looking at what you believe when it comes to work and career. Maybe being a little bit more adventurous and taking risk. And that could be the setup to next summer, going into the fall, where if there is that retrograde and you decide to pivot, you could do it then. The eclipse on your sun that you just had is a really big deal. You know that, right? Your birthday, there was a solar eclipse. right on your sun. So that is setting the stage for, everything's new. How you're making money, your resources, your self-esteem. The sun rules your chart. So you're going to have to take a whole year to see how that's going to kind of manifest. But that's a very big deal. And it's in opposition to Saturn. So you're going, I need to make more money because Saturn in the 8th house, I have debt, or like my partner's not working as much right now, or we're having a hard time saving, or we have something we're saving for. So there is a sense of feeling very limited with Saturn in opposition to your sun and a solar eclipse going down. But it means that you're starting to really build up a sense of knowing your worth and not wanting to be involved in working relationships, friendships, romantic relationships where you're feeling like you're not being valued and people aren't showing you, your worth, or they're not, pulling their weight. Certainly Saturn's like, having to chase people to get them to kind of contribute and like pay for stuff, which feels like a bit of a bummer, but you'll learn, I guess, and realize more of your own self-worth this year as a result of some of those limitations that are going on. What's up, Janie Doe? Anyway, hopefully that's helpful for you, Jacqueline. It was a big birthday. You didn't even know it. All right, we've got Rachel. I bet this is good. Rachel's got info on Pajama Guy. All right, Rachel says, 5484. This full moon is on my Sun-Saturn opposition. Okay, let's look. Yeah, it's right on your sun. And the sun is the ruler of your 12th house. So it's definitely bringing out all of the hidden karmic gunk and drama revolving around relationships. And then the sun is sitting on your Saturn. So with Saturn in opposition to your sun, you're like, there are people that I want to connect with, or places that I want to go, people I want to spend time with, but I feel like there's like a mental block or a communication block, or they vanish. So this is highlighting that, bringing that to a conclusion or a completion. So she says, I kind of broke up with Pajama Guy, but mainly set a boundary, so not sure. Ball is in his court. He's an Aries sun, Cancer rising, Cap moon. What do you think? Make or break? He's being a cocky, delusional ass. I think that, for the full moon to be taking place in Taurus, as in, is he Aries rising? He's Aries sun. Cancer rising. So the full moon is going to be taking place in his 3rd house. So it's going to be about, communication or anything. Oh no, what am I saying? Not his 3rd house. It's going to be taking place in his 11th house. So that's whether or not he can still be friendly with a relationship. Venus is going to be in the 4th. So Saturn rules his 7th, and Saturn is trining Jupiter. So maybe he thinks that there's some room for there to be something there. I mean, for you, I look at this more like I'm more focused on what's happening with you. This is about you putting the kibosh on romantic partners or people who are, communicating in a way where they're okay with you guys having space or them not making change, and it looks like you're not doing it. This also sextiles the North Node in your 7th, where Saturn and Neptune are kind of like wrapping up their tour. So when you say delusional, yeah, Saturn and Neptune could be people who aren't really seeing themselves very clearly, or maybe they're not really as committed to the self-change as they need to be for the relationship to work. Now, Jupiter is trining that. So it looks like, they are optimistic that you guys can still be friends or be friendly. But a lot of Cancer and Cancer risings are going to be in for a rude awakening next year when Saturn and Neptune align in Aries. And that'll be, February, mid-February, where suddenly now partnerships are going to have to try harder, or they're going to have to be willing to go public, or they're going to have to be willing to commit to them. And it's going to be difficult. So I think that I would be very careful with Saturn and Neptune retrograde back in my 7th. If you know that this is a situation where you're not getting what you want and you're calling it a breakup, and you're also doing this while Pluto is squaring your Venus, it's smart because you're getting it out there before you start having some of the more uncomfortable conversations that would be likely happening next year. I would also watch when anything is going on with Jupiter. So Jupiter's going to turn retrograde in early November. It means that maybe you're reevaluating whether or not you guys can actually be friends. Then there's going to be more of a reevaluation of a relationship again, and that's going to be happening at the end of February going into March of next year when Mercury retrogrades. So you are reassessing relationships with Venus. It's like, do I want them or do I not? I think it's smart that you kind of lay down the law, especially as like a Cancer rising. You're going to see as we get into Capricorn, like he's going to have to try a lot harder in Capricorn season to get other people's attention as all these planets go through his 7th house and it's opposing Jupiter. So it's like he's going to go, I've been really optimistic and kind of cocky, but like the Jupiter opposition to all that Capricorn is like, no, you're going to have to try harder than that. You can't just say things or be optimistic. You actually have to show up, and like they're going to see the resistance that's going to come from a relationship if they're not like being more mature, because Capricorn energy is like more Saturn. Jupiter is a little bit more youthful. What better time than, you know, if you have a full moon that's on your sun, that to phase something out, especially if you feel like it's not a part of your path or your purpose, in opposition to Saturn, where you're feeling like somebody's not listening to you, so you just have to kind of lay down the law and be like, no, this is where it ends, this is where it dies, Scorpio. And at least you're doing it at a time where there are some trines that do say, if you guys handle this in an appropriate way, where he respects your wishes and also he realizes that he either needs to get with the show or there's no relationship, you guys do it in an amicable way so you can still be friends if that's something that you still want, right? I mean, a lot of it would be more, I think we looked at his chart if I remember correctly. So the full moon's near his Chiron, which is going to be about somebody being like, yeah, I don't know if we can be friends. And look at Venus, the ruler, is conjunct Pluto. So it's like somebody who's like, yeah, I don't know, like there's been way too much stuff. There's way too much history that's gone on between us. Like, I don't know if we can be friends. You can try. I would just hope that you guys can be like, you know, kind and peaceful to one another to see if that's possible. And then the Mercury retrograde's going back into his 5th house. So that means he's going to be going back and forth and reevaluating and maybe changing his mind when it comes to a relationship. And you'll see right around the end of November when Mercury retrogrades with Venus that he's like, oh, well, somebody comes back around, we can be friendly. And they're going to be like, no, we're friends. It's not meant to be something like intimate. You know, the retrogrades in Scorpio, it's like, no, we're not sleeping together. And then Saturn rules his 7th and it's retrograde. It's going to continue to be retrograde until December. Then we will see a huge emphasis with his relationships, you know, end of December going into January. And my guess is with Saturn and Neptune meeting right on his midheaven, not only is it work changes, but it's relational changes. And I think he's going to find that somebody's like burnt out because now Saturn is opposing his Mars, it's opposing his Saturn. And the 4th house is his home. So he's never really had a lot of stability in his home or like living situation. Look at this, Pluto square the moon, Pluto opposed the sun. But the 10th house represents his career and it's also his partner's home. So it means that he might be meeting people who are like, no, you can't come over to my house anymore, or like, I'm not moving for you, or you're not moving in with me. You know, those are the kind of things that he'll start seeing. And no, I'm not coming to visit you at your house anymore. You have to come to me, that kind of stuff. And somebody having better boundaries with their home. So I don't know if that's something you've been thinking about, but my gosh, this guy's chart is cooked for the next couple of years, especially once Saturn starts opposing his Mars, because it's at a 4. So it's going to be somebody who's like, I'm not moving to be with you, or maybe he'll be entertaining a long distance relationship, or he's telling somebody like, I'm in it, but you know, does he actually make the necessary changes? I honestly feel sorry for whoever he ends up dating the next 2 or 3 years, because with Saturn in opposition to Mars, Saturn and Pluto square his moon, it means that there's going to be a lot of relational issues, and he's going to have to finally kind of bend the knee and make the necessary changes that he needs to make in order to get into a relationship. But he's always going to have these relational issues. I've seen a couple people from spring of 1982 who have this. This is what I'm talking about. That square, that opposition. It's nasty. He didn't grow up with like a lot of like harmony and like 2 parents that got along and like loved each other and like stayed together. Mars, Saturn, Pluto all retrograde in the 4th. Nope, that did not happen. And it opposes his sun. So his dad was kind of a piece of work. His parents got into it, you know, and he's got issues with both parents. And I don't really think he saw a lot of togetherness. She said his relationships have never been good. Well, of course, look at his chart. right? Debilitated moon, exalted Saturn. I mean, exalted sun. He's got some places, he's got some planets in good signs, but they're in horrible aspect to each other. And so this is just constantly creating this never-ending ricochet, if you include the nodes, off of each other. So for the next several years, Saturn's going to go through the 10th house, basically being like, show up to work, focus on a relationship, get committed. And if you don't, then you're going to fight with somebody. And guess what? You're going to have issues with your family. He's a 7th house moon. That's part of it, is that there's a lot of cycling out through relationships, and it's in the late degrees. But I don't know what's worse, moon squared Pluto or sun opposed Pluto. Those are both pretty difficult to have. Technically, his sun opposes Saturn too, and the sun and the moon square. So there's a side of him that really wants, like, you know, more. I think he wants to be the boss. He wants to run things. He wants to be like the boss of himself, and maybe he, you know, prides himself too much on work, and that gets in the issue with relationships. And then the opposition to Saturn and Mars and Pluto, like that. This is not a guy who wants to feel like he comes home and has a relationship and like has a family. Unfortunately, I think with the moon square, he doesn't do well with that. And he only responds well to like assertive, like bold, Capricorn-esque, you know, type women. That doesn't have to be the sign, just like the personality. And I know that you guys have some things that are very much in common. You know, like the Juno-Jupiter is good for relationships, Mercury on the sun, Venus-Mercury. Like you guys have some nice placements. But I feel like it doesn't really matter who he's with. Like I said, the next 2.5 years is going to be a real piece of work being with that guy. She says, I do lay down the law with him. I mean, I think that's good. I don't think you guys are going to know if somebody's bailing until the end of November, because the retrograde's in his 5th house. I would be like, if you're telling him that you have to lay down the law and there's boundaries, then the Mercury retrograde is not sleeping together. That's really what it's about. In your composite chart, Leo rising, sun in Taurus, Venus in the moon in Aries, and this is a chart ruled by the sun. So part of what's going on is Pluto's now coming into a square with your sun, which is a big deal because it's a closing square. And quite literally, Pluto going into the whole sign 7th, squaring the sun in the 10th, is like, if we don't change and transform the status of our relationship or the way that we're doing this relationship and go more into the light, right? We're more public in a more defined way. We're taking photos together. We're meeting each other's parents. We're traveling together. We're building a future together, you know? Because the sun at a 5 on the midheaven is like, you have to have a romantic life together, and you have to be showing people what you're going and doing and having fun. And if you guys end up getting married or you have kids or any of those things, that all has to be made public. And he's very private with all that Libra stuff in the 4th. He likes to remain, or appears he's single, because he has the sun in Aries in his 10th. So part of the Pluto square for the next year is being like, no, we're going to either, you know, end the relationship, Pluto, you know, in the 7th, or it means that we need to rework the relationship towards purely just a friendship, or we are going to realize that maybe it's too hard for us to be friends, so we're both going to have to be willing to make changes to like be in a public relationship and change what we are out in the world. Also next year, Saturn's going to hit your Venus. So, and Venus and the moon are in the 9th. So it's going to be conversations like, you know, are we talking about getting married? Are we talking about moving in together? You know, do we both want the same thing out of a relationship? Like, this would be the time with the North Node eclipses in the 7th, Saturn going into the 9th, that you guys would be taking the next step in a relationship. And that sounds great in this chart, but the problem is I don't think it's going to go well. And I also think that knowing that the Venus retrograde next year is going to go right over your Saturn, your Mars, and your Pluto. Look at the Mercury retrograde now, or the pre-shadow, is like the prequel to what's going to happen in the fall of next year. And, you know, Venus is going to retrograde right over all of this stuff. So if he makes promises for a year, you're going to get to the fall, and if it's not happening and you guys aren't actually moving in together, and this is where all of his Libra stuff is, you know, it's going to be hard. I mean, his chart is not for the faint of heart. He's almost the type of person where you could literally just leave him alone until next year and he'll still come back. He'll come back in March when you have a retrograde, you know, in your 7th house stuff. He'll come back probably in the fall when you have the retrograde over these placements. But the Pluto square the sun is like, if he's not on board to be a stepdad, or if he's not on board to have more kids, or if he's not on board to be in a public relationship, you know, yeah, he always comes back, but you don't have to let him back. But if there's a hard square to the sun and there's a conjunction involving, the 7th house lord and Venus and the moon, it's like, you're going to find out really quick. There's a lot less patience that you're going to have for him next year. I would say if you want to keep him in your life and you want to have that new defined, hey, we're not together, then don't sleep with him, right? And be very clear about that. And also know that it could be much more difficult for you guys next year when you go through some of those transits. Like the Pluto square, the sun, and like the Venus retrograde over like all the late degree Libra placements you guys have. I think that, I would be really careful. Saturn and Neptune are teaching you to be like, don't be with shady people or people who don't know what they want, or if they're confused. This is the tail end of it. Usually if you use that Saturn energy to be like, this is what I want, it's this or better, it'll clear somebody out and then it can bring somebody else in, or it can bring him in a much more committed phase. But the jury's still out until we get to March. March is going to be when we complete the recent eclipses and there's a retrograde. That's when you're going to have, I think, a better idea of what direction this is going to go. And Venus is squaring, Pluto's squaring your Venus too. So that's all happening at the same time. Anyway, I hope that is helpful in giving you a little bit of insight. I would get out there and be dating in December and January, when all these planets go through your 5th house. I would be dating other people and see what else is out there while you're kind of putting them on back burner. You're welcome. All right, we've got Ariel. And then after Ariel, we have Nay. Thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. If you haven't already, make sure you give me a thumbs up and like the stream. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel too, so you can catch all the other videos when we're here on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. Usually we're here live on Fridays. We'll be back next Friday. All right, so Ariel is October 23rd, 1990, 3:56 a.m., Virgo rising, sun in Libra, and the moon's in Sag. Let's see what she says. You read from me before. I've had many injuries and concussions over the last 3 years. Ouch. I just turned 35 and I'm looking for a mini natal reading that will hopefully be filled with positive relationships, new career path, and no injuries. Let me know what opportunities you see. Well, the natal return reading is going to be pretty involved. So it's a lot more involved than just me being like, it's going to be this, this, and this. My focus, I think, number one would be, looking at what's going on with your rulers in this next year. So if you're ruled by Mercury and you've got Mercury in Scorpio, the last year has been riddled with Pluto squaring your Mercury. Mercury is your body. Pluto has technically been in your whole sign 6th of accidents and health, and it's been squaring Mercury. So, whether that's nerve-related issues, accidents, bumping your head, car-related accidents, mobility-related things, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that. But Pluto is now coming out of that square, so it's going to be easing up in that department. The other thing that I would be watching is, what is supporting Mercury right now? Well, Uranus is in conjunct or quincunx that. So that gives you opportunities for spontaneous travel and learning new things, maybe changes at work. You will see the Mercury retrogrades in water signs this year. So right now it's starting in Sagittarius, so it's connected to your home zone, and it's retrograding back to the 3rd. So this will be pretty much all of November. The challenge is that it's going to retrograde conjunct Mars. So family dilemmas, issues with neighbors, kind of going back and forth, revolving around travel, home or relocation, and like family drama can come up, so you need to watch for that. It can be improved through better communication, working with a therapist, getting a reading, and that kind of stuff. And then in February into March, you'll see a Mercury retrograde in Pisces. This is in 2026. That will be taking place in your 7th house. Seems very similar to some of the transits that we had at the beginning of this year in the spring. So if you remember, February, March, Mercury retrograde, eclipses in the 7th house. Then we also saw that, there was a Venus retrograde in your 7th. So there's a lot of relational things that were changing. You will see a continuation of eclipses in your sign next year. It won't just be in Virgo and Pisces. It's also going to be happening in Aquarius and Leo as well. But I would be keeping an eye on your relationships and who's coming and going out of your life in February, March. And then in July, you're going to see, end of June going into July, Mercury retrograde in Cancer in the 11th house. which is a good time to reconnect with friends, reevaluate your goals. It could be a time where you could meet somebody. There can also be opportunities for family gatherings and get-togethers and seeing people you haven't seen in a while. And then there will be another Mercury retrograde that's going to be taking place in Scorpio in the fall. I believe it's I think it's October. And it looks like Venus and Mercury will actually go retrograde right over your Mercury, which is your chart ruler, right over your Sun, which is your 12th house ruler, right over your Venus. Think back to the fall of 2018, okay? There was a Venus retrograde that happened there, which was pretty significant for you because it was right in the line of fire with not only your chart ruler, but also your Sun. I wouldn't buy a car then. I'd be really careful with expenses. I wouldn't be making any major physical changes, any aesthetic or cosmetic changes, major hairstyles or any surgeries or anything like that. I think it is a time where it would be really beneficial for you to be investing in doing some kind of a retreat work in the fall, or maybe you're going to another country, or you're going to be going to a healing center or something that is going to be more spiritually aligned. But definitely be careful with health and also expenses, as both your chart ruler as well as Venus will be retrograde in the fall of next year. There isn't really any planets that are aspecting your Mercury per se. Like I said, Pluto's coming out of it. Saturn is going to be in conjunct or quincunx it. Uranus is going to be in conjunct or quincunx it. So it's relational changes and opportunities for travel. And then you're going to see Jupiter come in and square it. So that'll be a quick square. That's not going to be too long. But certainly with Mercury square the north and the south node in your chart, it means that you have to learn a lot about communication and travel and expressing your values and your needs. So that's going to be really highlighted by the Jupiter square, the Pluto square, the Chiron opposition. So it'll be a lot of relational and kind of financial stuff that comes up. She says, having a lot of family relational issues with parents and siblings. Yeah, I'm hearing that from a lot of my Virgo risings now. It just started up because Mercury's getting ready to go retrograde and it's with Mars. So whether it's family fights, siblings starting problems, people kind of backing out of traveling to visit family during the holidays, neighbors that are being a pain in the butt. I'm hearing it. So yeah, that's kind of expected. Keep in mind that there can be some really heated exchanges, especially with mother figures that can be kind of going on where things can be said that can't be taken back. My eyes would be the most focused on home and relational changes now, relationship changes in the spring, possibility for some job or work changes over the summer, and then you really got to keep an eye on the fall with what's going on with your health. Knowing that there's going to be those retrogrades over your Sun and your Venus, you're also somebody that I would be go and invest and get a solar return reading. So you can really sit down and go, okay, explain to me the cycle. What does the Mercury retrograde mean? What do I need to watch for? What does the Venus retrograde mean? What do I watch for? Cast a solar return and see where that's taking place. But think back to what happened in 2018, because you're going to see some similar themes that are going to happen. And this year now, you're 35, you're in an annual perfection, you're 12. So the Sun is your time lord this year. So you don't just look at Mercury, you look at what's going on with your Sun. Okay, so you're going to want to look at the solar eclipses that are going to be happening. We're going to have a solar eclipse in Aquarius that's in February. There's going to be a solar eclipse in Leo that's going to be in August. And I think that's pretty much it for the solar eclipses. Maybe the Mercury Cazimis would be other transits that you're going to want to watch. But your Sun's conjunct Venus in your whole sign second. So it's definitely about what you're letting go of in terms of resources, finances, relationships. This is the time where you're getting rid of anything that you have that you've held on to that's relationship oriented, or things that you connect to other people that you're not with. So it's almost like a relationship clear out. So you'll want to watch when planets go through the 12th house, which will be July and August. You really want to pay attention to the solar eclipses and when planets are on top of your Sun or aspecting your Sun. Jupiter will be there too. So it definitely talks about clearing out relationship karma, maybe even opportunities for soulmates to come in or international travel. Yeah. Yeah, relationship clear out's a big theme with all that Libra in the second. You collect things connecting to them, Hopefully that's helpful for you. All right, we've got Nay, and then we've got Gemma and Maria. Let's see if I can find Nay's chart here. I almost forgot. I have pumpkins that I still haven't carved. I should have put them out. All right, we've got Nay in the Bay. What's up, Nay? March 27, 2001, 1:55 p.m., Santa Clara, California. Is there potential to get a boyfriend in the months to come? It's cuffing season, y'all. Can you tell? What a good time for Nay to be getting a reading. Look at this moon conjunct Uranus in her 7th house. Literally getting a reading in a public arena on the internet. That's fun. I always love when that always happens. All right, so relationships are a combination of a couple things, Nay. The 5th house is more like dating, kind of filling somebody out, maybe something casual, ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter's in the 12th, so there's a sense of like manifesting, praying, and hoping somebody comes in. And it's also a combination of your 7th house, which is committed relationships, ruled by Saturn and Uranus. Well, Uranus is retrograding over your Saturn. So it means that there's a lot of things changing with your status, and there's a lot of things changing with your career, but it doesn't seem to indicate a lot of stability when it comes to long-term relationships right now. And Saturn and Uranus square. So it says whether it's your career, your status, or your relationships changing, or work impacting relationships or vice versa, there's a lot of that in your life. A lot of it's just learning to work with it. And I think with Saturn being in your 10th house is like not feeling the need to have a defined relationship status to define whether or not you feel secure or worthy. And Uranus in the 7th is just, you're going to bring in a lot of people who are going to be very different and unconventional. Positive is that if I were to go in order, over the next month, Mercury is going to retrograde in your 5th house where you're like, do I want to invest myself back into dating? And you may potentially, when it dips into Scorpio next month, be like, yeah, I could move forward, but what do I have to deal with in the past? And what relationship hangups or what people do I have to really kind of like detach from and not hold on to so I can let new love in? 2 is you're going to start seeing in February, there's going to be eclipses that are going to start happening in your 7th house of relationships. So like for a Leo rising, this is the first time in 19 years, so the first time in your adult life ever that you're having North Node eclipses in your 7th house. And the North Node usually brings somebody new in, and it's usually about growth and development. So the North Node's not there yet. It's a nodal eclipse because it's close enough to the North Node, because it's at 28, the North Node's at 8. So because it's within that 10 degrees, it's picking up the energy of the North Node. So what's happening here is it's basically saying something new or someone new can be coming into your life around mid-February, and that'll set the stage for about 6 to 12 months of new relationship cycles. Now, the other thing is we're also looking at, Uranus and Saturn. They're on top of each other. They're direct, so that can also indicate things are about to change. And then the finale is that you're going to have Saturn come in conjunction with your sun. You're the sun, other people are Saturn. So your sun's at a 7. I do feel like there is definitely relationship energy, especially by April. Sun-Saturn transits are not easy. Like relationships don't come easy under that transit. You're going to learn a lot about relationships. You may have to travel. There could be a long-distance relationship. You guys could be culturally different in some way. But I think with Saturn hitting your sun, it's a merger of you and another person. It might mean also you're working with like a relationship coach, or you're like listening to motivational talks on relationships and how to better yourself, to show up better in a relationship, which I think might help. And then Saturn's going to hit your Venus. So a lot of that's going to be learning a lot about yourself and learning a lot about how you fit into relationships and what role you play in some of your relationship cycles. And then Saturn will move off of them. It'll come back later in the year. And then the North Node's going to come into conjunction with Uranus, where I would say it's a good time to be meeting with an astrologer at the end of 2026 when you have this conjunction. Also with Saturn on your sun, good time for it. And then it does look like relationships are just going to continue to evolve from that point on, because the North Node eclipses are going to be happening in your 7th house. So it's a process, basically. Things really start to kick up more so in the spring. But I would say if you're open to getting back into dating now, yeah, just make sure that you're not really entertaining or engaging with anybody who's like past relationship related. Clear that out. And also a lot of this is about thinking about where you're living and whether that's, future plans for moves, or if you would consider trying to meet somebody in another location. They say you meet the person wherever your 7th house lord is. So Uranus is in the 7th house. I think that means that you're going to be friends with them first, or you meet them through some kind of social connection, or maybe you're using astrology to predict the timing. Saturn's a co-ruler, it's in the 10th, and it's at a Gemini degree, so you might be talking to them at work, or you may have a job change, or you might have a change of mind or a change of perspective on your career or relationships, and then boom, somebody comes in. And it can be more than one, it can be 2, because your Saturn's at a Gemini degree, and Saturn and Uranus square each other. So it's almost like Right when you're feeling like you're about to give up and then you throw yourself into work, boom, a relationship or like a opportunity where you connect with somebody can happen. But usually when the first lord and the seventh lord meet, that's a big relationship transit. For you, it's slower because Saturn obviously moves very slow. And that's a once in 29 years. But also when Saturn hits Venus, that's a big relationship turning point. All of that stuff happens for you in the spring. So I would like to see you get back on the horse. Let me know what happens between February and April, who shows up. Come back around and let me know who you meet. And be open to travel, continuing education, courses, or working on like going to seminars or things on love and relationships. Or if you find like an author or a teacher or a guru that teaches a lot about self-love and relationships, that would be really good because that'll enhance some of your Saturn transit on your Venus. Hope that's helpful, Nay. Let me know what happens. All right, Gamma and then Maria. Let's see if I can find her. There she is. October 4th, 96, Virgo rising. Let me make this Placidus chart. There we go. All right, so she's a Virgo rising, Sun in Libra, Moon in Cancer. She says, I have been offered a promotion that's been in the works for a year, more responsibility and travel. I'm very comfortable in my position now and have a great work-life balance. I'm worried because I don't want to lose that. Should I accept it? Are you surprised? It happened because, well, Jupiter's in your 10th. But it's also because recently Mars and Mercury went into your 3rd. So now it's like people going, okay, this is what we're willing to offer you. Here's the changes in benefits and expenses and pay and also travel. And it's trining Jupiter. So it's expanding your career through travel and communication, trying to get you out of the house. And to me, it looks like over this next several weeks, as Mercury, your chart ruler, goes retrograde and it trines Saturn, you're going to have to talk to your astrologer or talk to your spouse or your partner. It's also about the trine to Jupiter, you know, being very clear with, you know, your bosses in regards to what you are and are not comfortable with when it comes to travel-related gigs, and how it's impacting your home and your family. You know, it's like, well, you know, obviously I am open to traveling and having these experiences, but you know, if you're going to be like much further away, not for me, for Riley. Hold on a second. I'm just looking at your message here. Hold on. Oh, for Riley. Okay. I was going to say, what? Who is this? Is this your partner? Who is this? July 19th, 96. Let's see. $2:30 p.m. Oh, right. Okay. Oh, I have her. I should have just pulled it up. That's okay. In Portland. All right, so I've got her here, July 19th, 1996, 2:30 p.m. Scorpio rising, Sun in Cancer, and the Moon is in Virgo. So Jupiter on the Sun, I mean, that's pretty textbook, right? Sun is your career. Jupiter on the Sun is like traveling more for work. It will bring, I think, lots of like ease, and there could be some great creative kind of ventures that can kind of come from it. You know, bars, restaurants, like museums, like art stuff that she would enjoy. Jupiter will continue to stay on the Sun, so that also means that the offer is here now. It's going to start to shift, and she may be able to either get back into doing this stuff if she decides to postpone it, and she's like, I'll be more open to it next year. In like June or July, when Jupiter is direct on her Sun and on her Mercury, and then there's a Mercury retrograde, she may be able to get into it or get out of it. So if she says, look, I'm happy doing what I'm doing now, I don't think I'm ready right now, maybe next year, please consider me next year, she can come back to it next summer. If she decides to take it, then she would take it now, but she would be definitely reevaluating where she stands with the work that she's doing. And that's going to be February through April, and then that's going to be the end of June going into the beginning of July. I mean, you know, when she says that she's got like a really good workflow, I mean, it's going to be some time before Saturn is in her 6th. I think about the Saturn return hitting her natal Saturn in the South Node, and if she feels like she's traveling a lot and working, doesn't have a lot of togetherness with her partner, she could feel like, because Saturn is in her whole sign 6th house, that like work and scheduling is eating into the relationship with her partner. And the Mercury retrograde is going to be about playing with some of the potential ideas, or like the, you know, the perks, the benefits, the financial side of things, and like negotiating it. And I wonder if a lot of expenses would be paid connecting to the travel, not just accommodations. That's very much Pisces. But it's like, you know, is she going to have, you know, funds and other things that she could spend on entertainment? You know, could you guys also swing potentially bringing you into the mix if you wanted to meet her somewhere? I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea. I think these opportunities for her to be doing work that's going to be travel oriented is going to keep happening. I also think that the South Node hitting her moon in the 10th house is basically saying, hey, here's the deal. Now we're bringing back some kind of karmic pattern revolving around, you know, travel and getting a little bit of like a break from the daily routine, right? Virgo at a 12 is, oh, you know, I don't have to stay super focused and physically be in a location while I'm working. Like I can be traveling, or I could be doing things internationally, or I could be exploring. Like I think it's nice. I think it would come with ease. And it's getting her out of like the rigidness of having to be in an office. Yes, she's getting a travel stipend. So there you go. I mean, if this were me, I would take it because the aspects are so good. Because Mars is trining Jupiter and the Sun, and it's going to be fun and adventurous. Because it's trining Saturn in the 5th house, there's going to be lots of opportunities for creativity, and you guys could turn it into a situation where if she's going to, you know, be somewhere for a couple of days or over a weekend, you could meet her and you guys could turn it into, you know, being able to have quality time together and getting out of the house. I think she'll probably feel like she's getting a little stuck into like a rigid routine at work, and she's going to want out, you know, come the end of the year. And I also feel like if she's not crazy about it, she needs to be paying attention to what's happening in March and April, because it can ground her and bring her back into like a regular routine schedule. And like, yeah, she is going to have to be really good about her routine. Like Saturn and Neptune going into the 6th house, even if you're working a day job and you're going to an office, you're going to have to work harder to watch what you're eating. You're going to have to make sure that you're working out. You're going to have to make sure that you're being productive and you're getting all your tasks done. That can be a little bit harder for her, because Saturn is actually going to be squaring Jupiter in the 3rd. So it's like, hey, I'm, you know, traveling a lot for work, Jupiter in Capricorn, but am I making time for my spouse, right? And like date night, 5th house. Am I making time to take care of my pets if you guys have a pet? Does this postpone getting a pet if you wanted to get a pet? Does this mean that maybe she's having to make sure she's staying in like, you know, hotels that they have gyms, right? Aries is about fitness, and she's not like, you know, if she's not falling off of staying active. I would say if she's got a walking routine, or she's working on like a treadmill, or she's like using like hot saunas and spas and stuff, she'll be fine. Maybe there can be some impacts on her health of her kind of traveling and being around a lot of places, because the South Node Saturn could mean there could be issues with her immune system. And making sure that she's just not like eating out all the time. I think a lot of it's going to be about staying on top of that. But these are things she would deal with even if she wasn't traveling next year. So I say, because the astrology right now is so good, I would take it and know that she's going to have to be on top of her routine February through April. And then also she'll have an opportunity to review whether or not she wants to keep doing this or if she wants to change gears pretty much the end of June going into July of next year under that Mercury retrograde. I love the Jupiter-Saturn trine right now. This is as close as it's going to get. The next like 2 weeks, Jupiter and Saturn are the closest they're going to be until like the second half of next year. And Jupiter is exalted and Mars is in Scorpio. So it's trying to kind of open the door to being like, okay, you're restless, you need to get out. Like, here's some work that can kind of give you some freedom. Even though she's really grounded in her routine, it's okay. It'll be good for her to consider accepting it. She can always go back and tell her during the retrograde period this next month, have that conversation. That's like, I'm open to doing it, but for whatever reason, if I feel like, you know, I need to kind of regress into another position, what does that look like? Would I still be able to do that? Hopefully that's helpful. Sorry about the confusion there. All right, and then I've got, who else do I have here? Maria. Let me see, do I have her in here? You're welcome. That was 10/28. 86. Let's see. I don't think I have you, so I got to add you in here really quick. Happy belated. There we go. All right. So Miss Maria, now I've got you here. October 28th, let's fix that. 86. And that was at 5:47 p.m. in Virginia. So you're Aries rising, sun and moon in Scorpio. Hello from the Philippines. All right, so let's take a look. So she says, last week you pulled some cards for my question regarding climbing my career ladder. You suggested looking at my up-and-coming Venus and Saturn transits. What do you see? So Venus is currently going through Libra. It obviously deals with money. And it's getting ready to come into the 7th house, which is more relationship-oriented. It will be in a sign that's going to be sextiling your Saturn, so it can be improving the relationships you have with people at work, and also like healthcare relationships to people who are, you know, practitioners that you work with. Saturn is in your 12th house, where a lot of my Aries and Aries risings are like, I want to change something, I want to shift gears, but there's this like feeling of like this inertia that's pulling you back because Saturn and Neptune are retrograde in your 12th. And until Saturn goes back into Aries, you're not really going to be feeling like you're ready to emerge and show the world something new that you're doing until like January, February, March of next year. Now, with that being said, I don't think you have to wait that long for there to be a change. I am looking at, you know, Saturn finally coming out of its square with your Venus, so that should improve your finances. Over the next year, Saturn will trine your Venus. And in terms of your natal Saturn, you're going to be having the South Node transiting your natal Saturn. So the buildup for work stuff is really coming here. Exalted Mars in Capricorn going into the 10th house with the Sun and the Venus transit, all on your Jupiter. It looks very strong at the end of December, beginning of January. And, oh, hold on a second. I'm just realizing the time. I could have sworn I put the right year there. Sorry about that. 1986. Thank you. Just catching that. There we go. This look right? Taurus rising. Taurus rising, sun in Scorpio, moon in Virgo. So we're looking at your 10th house. We're looking at your 6th house. Venus is going through your 6th house. And Saturn ultimately rules your 10th. So look at this Mercury retrograde that's going to be right on your Saturn. That's prominent. So this is about coming back, talking to an astrologer, the retrograde in the 7th house, getting information about how you can navigate your work stuff. Yes, but the 28th. Why does it keep going the 29th? Why am I? That's so weird. I've changed it twice. I feel like this is such a Mercury retrograde moment. Sorry. There we go. Already, I've been feeling it the last week. All right, so still Taurus rising, Sun in Scorpio. And we've got that Mercury retrograde that's going to go right over your Saturn. So I'm going to go in chronological order. Mercury rules your money, okay? And it's also connecting, obviously, to your daily routines and your work. And then Saturn rules your career, both ways, whether you look at it from whole sign or Placidus. So this Mercury retrograde coming up on your Saturn is a good time to, like, you know, you can be getting feedback. You can be talking to your supervisors at work. You can be talking to a career coach, a job counselor, if that's something that you're interested in doing. And the conjunction with Mars means somebody's going to be giving you some kind of feedback about your work behavior. Okay. I don't know if you're in a position where you guys get reviews or anything at the end of the year, but watch for that at the end of November. And it looks like that Mercury retrograde is going to leave your Saturn, come back to your natal Mercury, where there's a new moon on your Mercury, which is getting really key insights about, what job changes you could be making or where you can be improving. So if there is some kind of like review, it'd be interesting. Or if you were to talk to like a headhunter, or if you were to talk to like a job placement specialist. And then you're going to see that really significant buildup happen here when all these planets going into Capricorn. And that's going to be about mid-January, Venus, Sun, Mars, Mercury going into your 10th, trining Uranus. So January looks very strong for career, in my perspective. And then it's the setup for an eclipse that you're going to have in your whole sign 10th. That's going to be in Aquarius around mid-February, around the 17th. I mean, I think the challenge is that, you have a lot of squares in your chart. If you look at all this Scorpio, Sun, Pluto, South Node, you're no stranger to either working in environments where you don't like the people, there's a lot of drama, unhealthy work environments, unhealthy habits, where health impacts your work, and all of this is squaring Mars. So some people would look at this from the whole sign perspective and go, well, relationships that you have with men at work or superiors or bosses don't mesh, or you don't always get on well with the people you work with, and certainly probably should not be dating the people that you work with either, with all this Venus retrograde, Sun and Pluto in Scorpio too. You're going to be another one of those people that's going to have a really interesting kind of turning point when it comes to relationship and work, specifically in fall of next year. But really, I think with like North Node eclipses in your 10th house for the next 2 years, that's a major growing period in your professional life. Granted, now Pluto is going to get up to, I think, about 5 or 6 degrees next year. So it's going to be sitting really close to your Mars, and it's going to start squaring your Sun and your Pluto. And the Sun's going to represent, obviously, creativity and, children or drama, dating partners. And then you have Pluto at a 7. So you got to be really careful about like dating in the office, relationships that you have, people who have crushes on you, things like that. Like try to avoid that like the plague. And one of the best things you can do is just start gearing up and getting ready for some big career changes and some goals and like really showing up in January. That factored with, Venus going through your 7th house. I mean, if you are looking for a new job, you could be working, like I said, with a career counselor or talking to somebody. And if you're wanting to see some changes to your status or to your work, be looking for that closer to February of next year when we have that North Node eclipse. And it's going to be a little stressful for like, if you have like Scorpio or Taurus in your chart, because where the eclipses are going to be in Aquarius and Leo, they're squaring those axes. So it's almost like South Node hitting your moon. You may move, you might make changes in your living situation, you might not prioritize or focus so much on dating or a relationship. It might be more about your career. Then you're going to see there is going to be a retrograde taking place, from your 5th house into your 4th house next year, opposing Pluto. So a lot of stuff talks about like having to make changes at home to better adjust what's going on with career, or maybe relocating for career, or if something changes at work, it influences where you're living. And it's just ricocheting off of everything that's going to be in your chart. But the positive, I want to focus on the positive, is this is the first time in your adult life that you're going to have North Node eclipses in your 10th house that you're working. So usually this is a time where we really get on the path of where we're meant to go. And I think it's not just so much just about that. I think it's also, Mars at an 11, career coaches, astrologers, therapists, partners, friends playing a role in some of the career changes that you're going to make. And while it hits your Mars, it's activating, fated relationships in about 2 years' time. But then it starts squaring all of your stuff. So you're going to really need the support of either a therapist or like a really good, healthy partnership and relationship to help you kind of navigate some of these changes that you're going through with the North Node moving through your 10th house. I remember when the North Node went through my 10th house and it started scoring stuff in my 7th, and I thought it was like, oh, it's just purely about my career. That's what I thought. And I had, conjunctions on planets in the 10th house, and it was scoring stuff in the 7th house. And what ultimately ended up being much stronger, because I didn't really do a lot of big career changes that year, it impacted the ruler of that house. So for you, it's Saturn. Saturn's in your 7th. So it tells me that it's going to be more relationship oriented and kind of bringing in relationships with somebody, whether it's a romantic relationship. Saturn's at an 8, it could be a therapist, it could be an astrologer who's going to help, you know, kind of shape the direction of where you're going with your career. So it may be some really important kind of cast of characters and people who pop in that are going to be helping you like navigate some of these new career changes. And then usually when the North Node's leaving the 10th house, that's when you'll really start to see some of the career shifts that are going to be happening. But yeah, you know, Venus conjunct Pluto in the Sun square Saturn. I mean, ouch. That's never easy in the relationship or the career department. But thankfully, you're kind of getting like this warrior spirit that's coming through with the North Node hitting your Mars over the next 2 years in the 10th house. And Taurus risings are realizing it's about building a community. It's about working with friends or working with a group of people, not having to do everything by yourself. So you either need a partner, a collaborator, somebody who can kind of help you like navigate some of those changes. Hopefully that was helpful for you. Make sure you have the right time and the right date now. And definitely let me know what happens during those periods, like especially during this retrograde over the next month, like who ends up coming in, or if you end up connecting with somebody who's going to give you some kind of career advice or some guidance, or somebody who's going to be like a mentor of sorts, that would be really helpful. All right, well, I'm pretty sure that that was everybody for the evening. Obviously, we're happy to be here on Thursday the 30th, but you can catch me here next week on Friday. It will be the very first live that we're going to be doing for the month of November. So if you're a level 4 member, your memberships are going to start over. You guys can come in and get a tarot reading or save it for an astrology reading on another week. We may have some things that we kind of tweak and kind of change in November. Obviously, we're going to have the holidays. We're going to have like Thanksgiving, and I think I'll be around the week of my birthday, but my birthday's in November. So I'll see if I can kind of throw something together and maybe give you guys some insight or show you guys like a calendar on my community tab of when we're going to be having the lives if we do have to make any changes. Make sure you're subscribed so you can see that. Click the bell button below so you get alerts to the channel. I'll be back on Sunday. We're going to do astro weather. And obviously this was a astrology live that we're doing prior to a full moon in Taurus. So if you haven't seen the full moon in Taurus, go and check that video out. I talk all about it. It's going to be on the 5th. And if you guys could please head over to my website, sign up for my newsletter at beyondtheveiledtarot.com. In about 10 days time, I'm going to be launching my very first tarot deck. So just got everything back from the printers today, just getting everything kind of taken care of. We're only going to be selling 100 limited decks. That's all that I'm putting out there. So if you want to be the first to be alerted when these decks become available, stay tuned. They're going to be out pretty soon. You guys should be able to pick those up before the holidays. For information on all that and much more, head over to the links below at beyondtheveiledtarot.com. Thank you guys so much. I hope you have a happy Halloween and you enjoy your weekend, and I will see you guys here soon. Take care.